Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, that it enjoy.
Chapter 1, Year 79 of the Hidden Leaf, Boruto Era. Hidden Leaf Village, Archaeological Research Institute. The air outside the institute was thick with the smell of fresh blood. Two figures moved at incredible speed, blurring as they rushed toward the entrance. They didn't need to check the guards, the silence told them everything they needed to know. The guards were already dead. Inside the dimly lit facility, a pale, unearthly figure stood before an ancient artifact. His palm glowed with a sinister green light. Under his touch, the artifact shifted and twisted, transforming into the shape of a glowing turtle. This was Karasuki, the treasured tool of the Otsutsuki clan. Otsutsuki Arashiki let out a low chuckle. His plan was simple but terrifying. Travel back to the past and steal the Nine-Tails Fox from Uzumaki Naruto before the boy grew strong enough to fight back. The two figures who had just burst through the doors were Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Boruto. Seeing the glowing turtle and the fading enemy, they didn't hesitate. They just charged. "Stop!" Boruto yelled, leaping forward. Sasuke's single eye widened. "Boruto, wait!" They dove into the light. However, in their rush, neither the legendary Uchiha nor the Hokage's son noticed a shadow slipping in behind them. Splash. Makoto's boots hit the wet ground with a heavy splash. A large, overstuffed satchel bounced against his back. A single drop of cold rain landed on his forehead, sliding down his nose. Then another. Then a downpour. Makoto blinked, wiping his face. "I'm back. No, wait, yes, I am definitely back." He looked around. Towering pipes and metal skyscrapers surrounded him, piercing the gray sky. He checked his surroundings carefully. He hadn't just returned to the Hidden Rain Village, Omegakure, he had returned to the Omegakure of the past. Makoto was a transmigrator, someone from another world who had woken up in the Naruto world. But luck was not on his side. He hadn't woken up in the peaceful Leaf Village. He had woken up in the Rain Village during the Boruto era. And let's be honest, the Rain Village of the future was a dump. Literally, in Makoto's time, the land of rain was crumbling. It was filled with mountains of trash, toxic fumes, and dirty water. It had basically become the giant garbage disposal plant for the five great nations. While the Hidden Leaf Village enjoyed skyscrapers, burger joints, and peace, the Rain Village was rotting away in the corner. The saddest part, none of the villagers in that ruined future knew the truth. They didn't know that the current 7th Hokage, Uzumaki Naruto, had once looked their leader in the eye and promised to bring them peace. Their leader, Nagato, had believed that boy. He chose to trust in Naruto's Book of Peace. He used his final breath to revive the people of the Leaf Village, ending the cycle of hatred and entrusting his home to Naruto. And what was the result? Trash, ruin, poison. Because Makoto knew the story, he had accidentally let it slip to the villagers. He told them about the 7th Hokage's forgotten promise. Because of this, the refugees of the rain saw Makoto as their last hope. They gave him everything. The refugees scraped together every last coin and scrap of food they had, just so Makoto could travel to the land of fire. "Go," they had said. "Find the answers." Makoto had arrived in the Hidden Leaf and kept his head down, waiting for this exact moment. When he saw a certain blonde kid asking around for a perverted book called Ika Ika Paradise, he knew the plot of the time travel arc was starting. So, he followed them. He was prepared. The moment he stepped into the light of the Karasuki turtle, a special power inside Makoto woke up. It reacted to the Otsutsuki's spacetime jutsu. In that split second, time was erased. It was a power that felt strangely familiar to an old anime he used to watch. In a world where time is erased, nobody remembers what happened. Not even Sasuke Uchiha could sense that a third person had hitched a ride in the time tunnel. Because of this time erasure, Makoto's landing spot shifted slightly. He didn't land with Boruto and Sasuke. Perfect, Makoto thought, adjusting his heavy bag. Sasuke and Boruto were off doing their hero thing. After they defeated Arashiki, Sasuke would use his eye powers to wipe everyone's memory. They would think nothing had changed and go back to the future. They would never know Makoto was here. "Don't misunderstand, I'm no spy," Makoto said suddenly, speaking to the empty air. Behind him, a sturdy hand was inches away from grabbing his neck. At the sound of Makoto's voice, the hand froze. "Then who are you?" a cold, robotic voice asked from behind. Makoto didn't flinch. He knew exactly where he was. In this era, the rain village was under the strict control of Pain. The moment Makoto arrived, the rain, which was infused with Pain's chakra, had already alerted the Pain of his presence. But Makoto had a cheat code. His ability, which he decided to name King Crimson because it sounded cool, allowed him to skip time and see a few seconds into the future. He had already seen this happen. He knew the Preta path of Pain would try to grab him from behind. Makoto stood up straight, brushing the water off his coat. He looked up at the tallest tower in the village, the one that looked like a giant, metal face sticking its tongue out. "I am the leader of a megaker from the future," Makoto announced, his voice echoing in the rain. "And I request a meeting with the current leader, Pain. Or should I say, Nagato." High up in the tallest tower, inside a dark sterile room, a frail man with red hair sat in a large machine. Nagato opened his eyes. The purple rings of the Rinnegan glowed in the darkness. "Is the intruder troublesome?" a woman's voice asked softly. Konan stood beside him. She was a beautiful woman with blue hair and an origami flower tucked behind her ear. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp. To Nagato, this intruder was strange. Usually, spies tried to hide. But this man, he just appeared out of nowhere, standing in the open rain, and announced himself. "He claims to be the leader of the rain from the future," Nagato said, his voice raspy. "He wants to see me, and he knows my real name." Quote. "Could it be another one like Madara?" Konan asked, her guard going up instantly. She was referring to the masked man who manipulated the Akatsuki. "I will go test him. Be careful, Konan." She nodded and turned toward the balcony. As she walked, sheets of paper peeled away from her body, forming large, angelic white wings. She leapt into the storm, gliding down toward the intruder. Down in the streets, Makoto was acting weird. He was standing in the pouring rain with his right hand raised high in the air, palm open, like he was waiting for a high five from a giant. He stood completely still, looking like a statue. Pain's Preta path had backed off, watching him confusedly. High above, Konan spotted him. Why is he standing like that? She wondered. He moved instantly to avoid the Preta path earlier. He must be a master of sensory jutsu. Konan folded her wings and entered a steep dive. She planned to land right in front of him to intimidate him as she dropped faster and faster. She was 10 meters away. 5 meters. Then, her face went pale. She realized something horrifying. If she continued falling at this exact angle, she wasn't going to land in front of him. She was going to land exactly on his open palm. If she didn't move, her ass would land right in his hand. It would look like he was catching a fallen angel like a toy. How absurd, Konan thought, her cheeks flushing slightly. She hurriedly flared her paper wings, braking hard in midair. She drifted awkwardly to the right, adjusting her landing. Instead of a menacing arrival, she touched down a few feet away, stumbling slightly before regaining her composure. She glared at Makoto. The man was still holding his hand up. He slowly lowered it, looking disappointed that his cool pose didn't work out. He knew, Konan realized, narrowing her eyes. He predicted exactly where I would land. He was mocking me. The man was clearly not simple. But, he also seemed a little bit crazy. "Follow me," Konan said coldly. She led Makoto into a dry, empty room on the lower level of the tower. She was about to interrogate him, but Makoto didn't wait. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a large sealing scroll. Poof! A pile of items appeared on the floor. There were dozens of glossy photographs and a stack of crumpled, dirty letters. "What is this?" Konan asked. "Proof," Makoto said simply. "These are photos of the Rain Village's future. And these letters are words the future villagers wanted to say to you." Konan hesitated. She stepped forward and crouched down, picking up a photograph. Her eyes widened. The photo showed a street she knew well. But in the picture, the metal pipes were rusted through. The buildings had collapsed. Mountains of wet garbage were piled high against the walls. Green, toxic sludge flowed through the canals where children used to play. She picked up another photo. Then another. They were all the same. Ruin, decay, death. This. Konan's hand trembled. "You could have faked these with genjutsu or paint. This proves nothing." "Read the letters," Makoto said softly. Konan put down the photos and picked up a piece of yellowed, rough paper. It was a letter from a grandmother. "To Lady Angel, if you are reading this, please save my grandson. He died from the poison gas in Sector 4 last week. We believed in the promise. We waited for the Hokage to save us. But nobody came. Please, don't trust them. Konan read another. And another. They weren't military reports. They were desperate cries for help. They were farewell notes. They were angry, sad, and hopeless. Where did these come from? Konan whispered, her voice shaking. She looked up at Makoto, her eyes searching for a lie. Makoto leaned against the wall, looking tired. Before I left my time, I told the villagers I was holding a memorial service. I told them that if they burned letters, the smoke would reach the spirits of their dead leaders. He pointed to the pile. They wrote down what they truly wanted to say to you and Nagato. They gave them to me to burn. Instead, I brought them here. The room was silent, save for the sound of rain hitting the metal roof outside. Konan stood up slowly. She carefully gathered the letters and photos, clutching them to her chest as if they were precious gems. Pack your things, she said, her voice softer than before. She turned and began walking toward the elevator. Nagato needs to see this. When they arrived at the top floor, Nagato looked surprised. He hadn't expected Konan to bring the stranger up so quickly, and certainly not without a fight. Konan, Nagato asked. Konan didn't speak. She simply walked over to his wheelchair and placed a crumpled, dirty letter in his lap. Read it, Nagato, she said. Nagato looked down. As he read the first few lines, his Rinnegan eyes shrank in shock. Chapter 2. Nagato stared at the crumpled piece of paper in his lap. The handwriting was messy, frantic, like the scrawl of a dying man. The seventh Hokage, he never kept his promise. It was all a lie. Nagato's eyes scanned the lines, his heart sinking with every word. He told the world he saved us. But the 5 great nations just saw an opportunity. They didn't send aid, they sent their garbage. They turned our home into a toxic waste dump for their industrial development. The air burns our lungs. The rain melts our skin. When we went to the Leaf to beg for the help we were promised, they beat us like dogs and threw us out. The final lines hit him like a physical blow. They don't think of us as friends. To the Leaf, Lord Pain wasn't a savior. You were just a monster they defeated. A bad memory to be erased. Nagato slumped back in his mechanical walker, a confusion warring with his anger. Who the hell was the 7th Hokage? Why had he cooperated with this person? And most importantly, the letter implied that in this future, Nagato had sacrificed his life to revive the people of the Hidden Leaf. I trusted them, Nagato whispered, his voice rasping. I chose to believe in a leaf ninja over my own people. And this is the result. He looked up at the photos Makoto had thrown on the table. The evidence was undeniable. The ruins, the sludge, the suffering. It was an absolute betrayal of everything Yahiko had stood for. Did we fail? Nagato clutched his head, his fingers digging into his scalp. Or does this mean that as long as I don't listen to that boy, as long as I don't get talked no jutsu by this Naruto kid, we can still win? He looked at Makoto. The stranger was leaning against the damp wall, smoking a cigarette with a look of bored detachment. What is your goal here? Nagato asked, his Rinnegan piercing through the smoke. Nagato had always been a god who needed a prophet. First, it was Yahiko who gave him a path. Then Obito posing as Madara. Then, in that other timeline, Naruto. Nagato had the power to destroy the world, but he always needed someone to point the gun. Now, faced with a future of absolute failure, he turned to the only man who knew the script. Simple, Makoto said, flicking ash onto the floor. I want a job. I want to be the Akatsuki strategist. You have the power, but your business model sucks. I'm here to make decisions that actually help a Megakure develop, rather than just collecting monsters. Konan stepped forward, her face stern. Letting you advise on village matters is one thing, provided your intel holds up. But the Akatsuki, that is a different matter entirely. She crossed her arms. Our members are shrank criminals, defectors, and psychopath. The members will find it difficult to obey your commands. Makoto just smirked. Is there a gathering coming up? Konan frowned. What? A meeting. Bring me to the freak show. I'll handle the introduction. A few days later, limestone cavern, outskirts of a Megakure. The air in the cave was stale and cold, illuminated only by the flickering light of colorful holographic projections in a few physical bodies. The core members of the Akatsuki had gathered. However, 2 silhouettes were conspicuously absent. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki. Makoto had played his cards carefully with Nagato. He told him bluntly, Itachi is a double agent for the Leaf. You don't have to kill him yet, but keep him the hell away from this meeting. If he hears my plans, the Leaf will know by morning. So, the pair had been sent on a wild goose chase to investigate the Hidden Leaf's barrier system. It was bait Itachi couldn't refuse, a chance to check on his little brother, Sasuke. Inside the cave, the tension was thick enough to cut with a kunai. "Oi, leader," a loud, abrasive voice echoed off the walls. "Where the hell are the weasel and the fish face? Don't tell me they got themselves killed by some no-name ninja. And who the fuck is this fresh meat?" Hidan stood there, shirtless and arrogant, his scythe resting on his shoulder. He pointed a rude finger at the only person not wearing a cloak with red clouds, Makoto. Pain stood on a high rock platform, looking down at his subordinates like a disappointed father. "Itachi and Kisame are on a specialized mission," Pain's voice boomed. "This is Makoto. He's here to apply for the position of Akatsuki's military advisor." Silence. Then, chaos. H. Hidan threw his head back and cackled. "Military advisor? You gotta be kidding me. This great Hidan doesn't need some pencil pusher telling him who to kill." Hidan unslung his massive scythe and pointed the jagged tip straight at Makoto's throat. A manic grin stretched across his face. "Hey, kid, I don't know what rock you crawled out from, but give me one reason why I shouldn't sacrifice you to Lord Jashin right now." The other members, Sasori, Deidara, and Kakuzu, watched coldly. They didn't care if Hidan killed the new guy. In the Akatsuki, if you died, you were weak. End of story. Makoto didn't even flinch. He ignored the screaming zealot and walked over to a small easel he had set up. He slapped a piece of paper onto a blackboard. "I was wondering," Makoto said, his voice calm and carrying well in the cave. "Which one of you distinct gentlemen handles the organization's finance?" Hidan blinked, thrown off by the lack of fear. "The fuck is finance?" "It's money, you religious nutjob," a deep, gravelly voice grunted from the corner. Kakuzu looked up. His green eyes, usually dead and cold, showed a flicker of interest. He glared at his idiot partner before turning his gaze to Makoto's blackboard. "Talk," Kakuzu commanded. Makoto tapped the paper. "A megacure is sitting on a gold mine. Under Hanzo the Salamander, this place developed advanced steam technology. The ninja here are mediocre, but the machinery, it's top tier. We can retrofit these factories to mass-produce light industrial consumer goods, heaters, engines, preservation units." He looked at Kakuzu. "We sell these to the 5 great nations. They have the resources, we have the cheap labor and the tech. It's passive income, Kakuzu. Millions of ryo pouring in without you having to stitch a single head back on." Kakuzu's eyes widened slightly. "But," Makoto continued, dropping the hook, "I know we need startup capital. So, I have a gift. Detailed intel on the land of waves." "Waves?" Kakuzu scoffed. "A poor island nation. Waste of time." "Not anymore," Makoto smiled like a shark. "A businessman named Gato has taken over. He controls the shipping lanes and the bridge construction. The locals are desperate. They're trying to hire ninja to assassinate him, but they're broke. They're going to lie about the mission rank to get a discount." Makoto leaned in. "We take the job. We charge them pennies, a symbolic 1 or 2 ryo. But in exchange, we take the shipping rights once Gato is dead. The land of waves is the choke point between the fire and water nations. If the hidden mist ever wants to expand, they have to go through us. We set up a toll. We control the trade route." Kakuzu was practically vibrating. This was a sustainable financial ecosystem. "Viable," Kakuzu muttered, a rare note of approval in his voice. "Completely viable." "Hey, Kakuzu," Hidan shouted, waving his hand in front of his partner's masked face. "Don't let him brainwash you with that nerd talk. Who cares about shipping lanes?" Hidan turned around, glaring daggers at Makoto. "So what if you can make a few coins? What gives you the right to order me around? I only listen to Lord Jashin. The leader's current policy is to collect the 9-tailed beasts," Makoto said, loudly talking over Hidan again. "The goal is to create a weapon of mass destruction to force peace through fear." He glanced at Pain. "The logic is sound. Fear is a better motivator than love. However, the execution is messy. Hunting Jinchuriki brings the wrath of the 5 villages down on our heads too early." Makoto paused for dramatic effect. "I have a plan that is infinitely easier than hunting tailed beasts. It achieves the same level of global deterrence, but with half the risk and double the profit." "Oh," Pain leaned forward on his rock perch. This was the first time Makoto had mentioned a grand strategy. "Speak." "Before I do," Makoto said, his face turning serious. "The loud one, the zealot, he needs to leave." Hidan looked like he was about to pop a blood vessel. Why do I have to leave? You got a death wish, kid. You think you're better than me. For this plan to work, strict operational security is needed, Makoto said flatly. And you have a mouth bigger than your brain. That's it, Hidan roared. Screw the interview. I'm taking your head. Swish. Without a hand sign or a warning, Hidan hurled his massive scythe. It spun through the air with a terrifying whistle, aiming to decapitate Makoto in a shower of gore. Kakuzu didn't move. He wanted to see if the military advisor was worth the investment. The scythe closed the distance in a fraction of a second. Clang. Makoto stood rooted to the spot. His hand was raised, and he had caught the thick metal shaft of the scythe just inches before the blade touched his neck. The force of the impact had cracked the stone beneath his feet, but his arm didn't tremble. Kakuzu raised an eyebrow. To catch Hidan's weapon mid-flight required not just strength, but insane reaction speed. Makoto's eyes were cold. He gripped the scythe, swung it around with surprising technique, and tossed it back. It skidded across the cave floor, sparking against the rock, and landed at Hidan's feet. Makoto dusted off his sleeves, looking utterly unimpressed. Like I said, nothing personal, Makoto said, staring Hidan down. But you really should spend more time training your taijutsu and reading a book instead of praying to your imaginary god. He smirked, delivering the final blow. Keep fighting like an idiot, and one day, you're going to get taken out by a mere chunin and buried in a hole where nobody can hear you scream. You little. Chapter 3. TCH. If you're gonna keep secrets, screw it. It's not like I actually wanted to know, you bastards. Hidan kicked a loose stone, sending it skittering into the darkness. He threw his scythe over his shoulder, the metal clanking loudly against his back. Instead of wasting my time listening to some civilian nerd lecture us, I might as well go offer a few prayers to Lord Jashin. Someone has to keep the faith around here. Hidan stomped out of the cave entrance while grumbling. He didn't stop until he found a nice, flat rock protected from the rain by an overhang. He sat down aggressively, clutched his bloody amulet, and began his ritualistic chanting, completely tuning out the world. Inside the limestone cavern, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Kakuzu watched his partner leave, his green eyes narrowing until Hidan was just a speck in the distance. He waited a full minute, listening to the rhythmic, psychotic mumbling echoing from outside. He's praying, Kakuzu grunted, turning back to the group. Once he starts that nonsense, a mountain could collapse next to him and he wouldn't flinch. He definitely won't be eavesdropping. Kakuzu walked toward Makoto, his heavy footsteps crunching on the gravel. He crossed his massive arms, radiating an aura of menacing pressure. Speak, Kakuzu commanded, his voice low and dangerous. And this better be good. If I smell even a hint of bullshit in this perfect plan of yours, I'll rip your heart out and sell it before you hit the floor. Makoto didn't flinch. He adjusted his collar, looking every bit the corporate strategist amidst a den of monsters. No problem, but before I begin, I need to baseline our intel. Everyone here is fully aware of how Hidan's ability works, correct? Makoto dragged a rickety wooden frame to the center of the cave. Pain, silent and imposing as a statue, stepped aside to yield the floor. Makoto pulled out a sheaf of papers, crude drawings and handwritten notes, and tacked the first one onto the frame. It was a low-budget, analog version of a PowerPoint presentation. We know, Kakuzu answered flatly, sounding bored. Yeah, obviously, Deidara scoffed from his perch on a rock, looking like a rebellious teenager. That zealot has absolutely no concept of stealth. He screams about his curse to every enemy he meets. Does he not understand that secrecy is the ninja way? It's embarrassing. You're one to talk, bomber, Sasori's raspy voice scraped out from inside the hunched Hiriko puppet. Your art is literally a giant, look at me, sign. Shut up, Donna, art is an explosion, focus, Pain's voice cut through the bickering like a blade. Hidan's curse technique was a broken ability. As long as he ingested an enemy's blood and stood in his little circle, he became a human voodoo doll. Any damage he took was reflected on the victim. The catch, he needed the blood. Hidan is immortal. He won't die from fatal wounds, Makoto said, tapping the paper with a stick. But his technique has a bottleneck, obtaining the sample. In a high-speed fight against Shrank opponents, scratching them isn't guaranteed. Makoto flipped to the next page. It showed a crude drawing of a mosquito. My initial draft, Makoto explained, was to steal the Aburame clan's secret insect techniques. We'd force Hidan to sign a contract with a summoning beast, specifically, mosquitoes. Deidara grimaced, swatting at the air around his face as if he could already hear the mosquito buzzing. That is disgusting. Bugs are gross, yeah. That's so, unartistic. Agreed, Makoto nodded solemnly. And it's flawed. If we steal the Origami secrets, the leaf goes on high alert. They specialize in anti-insect barriers. Plus, mosquitoes are loud. Too few of them, and you don't get enough blood for the ritual. Too many, and the target notices a black cloud of death approaching. It fails the stealth check. He paused, looking at the drawing. There's also the personality issue. Hidan thinks his body is a temple for Jashin. Asking him to let bugs crawl under his skin. He'd try to sacrifice us for suggesting it. So, plan A is in the trash. Makoto ripped the paper off the frame and crumpled it up, tossing it aside. I considered other options. Disguising ourselves as a neutral medical charity to host blood donation. But that takes too long and leaves a paper trail. Despite the absurdity of the situation, a civilian giving a lecture to the world's most dangerous criminals using drawings on a blackboard, the Akatsuki were captivated. Makoto spoke with a strange rhythm, a mix of logic and madness that fit right in. Finally, Makoto said, pinning up a new sheet of paper. This one had a large question mark on it. I settled on the perfect plan. It is efficient, undetectable, and creates a global hostage situation overnight. The only flaw, Hidan must never, ever know where the blood comes from. He turned and pointed a finger directly at the strange, plant-like creature protruding from the ground. Zetsu. The two halves of Zetsu spoke in unison. Black Zetsu narrowed his singular yellow eye, while White Zetsu looked curiously. You are the organization's intelligence network, Makoto stated. You can merge with the Earth and travel instantly. Your infiltration and stealth capabilities are unrivaled in the world. Correct. Makoto was stroking the ego of the spy. He knew Zetsu's true nature, but the others didn't. They needed to understand that Zetsu could go where no one else could. I can, White Zetsu chirped happily. I can go anywhere. Walls, barriers, bathrooms, no problem. Exactly, Makoto smiled. The 5 great villages rely on sensory barriers. But you can bypass them by copying the chakra signature of a ninja returning from a mission. Or just slipping in during maintenance. Sure, White Zetsu nodded. But what do you want me to do inside the villages? Kill the cage? No, Makoto said, his face dead serious. I want you to visit the public restrooms. Specifically, the women's restrooms used by high-ranking kunoichi. The cave suddenly went silent. White Zetsu tilted his head, his expression a mix of confusion and genuine shyness. Restrooms. You aren't going to make me collect poop, are you? Toby might like that kind of joke, but I have standards. No, the corner of Makoto's mouth twitched violently. Jesus, these guys are freaks. I need blood, Zetsu. And as we all know, biology dictates that women shed blood every month, like clockwork. Konan, who had been listening intently with her arms crossed, suddenly stiffened. Her amber eyes widened. Don't look at me, she hissed. Makoto wisely snapped his head away, focusing back on his audience of men. It couldn't be helped. The Akatsuki was a sausage fest. He tapped the board again, speaking rapidly to bypass the awkwardness. Think about it. Zetsu infiltrates the waste disposal systems. He collects the used sanitary products, pads, tampons, whatever they use. He labels them, seals them, and brings them back. He spread his arms wide, like a prophet revealing a miracle. Combined with Hidan's curse, we don't need to fight. We hold the lifeline of every major kunoichi in the world. The Tsuchikage granddaughter, one of the Sannin, we have their blood. If they refuse our demands, Hidan could stab himself in the ass, and the Sannin drops dead wherever she is. It is the ultimate assassination tool. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Even the dripping of water from the stalactites seemed to stop. Konan looked like she wanted to vomit. In that instant, she made a solemn vow to herself. From this day forward, she would incinerate every piece of trash she produced with explosive tags. No exceptions. The man was a lunatic. A practical lunatic, but a lunatic nonetheless. Hey, Konan, Makoto said, noticing Konan's murderous glare. What's with that look? It's a strategic proposal. Does anyone see a tactical flaw here? There's a problem, you pervert, Konan said, taking a deep breath to stop herself from turning him into confetti. What about the men? This plan only targets the female population. The most powerful shinobi are often male. Makoto smirked. He had been waiting for this. Ah, excellent question, but fear not, anatomy is on our side. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Statistics show that 9 out of 10 men over the age of 50 suffer from hemorrhoids. Ha, Kisame would have laughed if he were there. Take the third Tsuchikage, Onoki, Makoto continued, gesturing wildly. The man is ancient. His back gives out when he picks up a rock. Do you honestly think his digestive system is in prime condition? It's a battlefield down there. When he wipes his ass, he bleeds. Zetsu just needs to collect the evidence. Oh my god, Deidara's eyes lit up like Christmas lights. He started vibrating with excitement. You're right, that old geezer definitely has hemorrhoids. I bet he cries on the toilet. Ha, that is art. Deidara looked ready to fly to the stone village and collect the sample himself just to spite his former master. So perverted, Konan facepalmed, massaging her temples. She was surrounded by idiots. As for the rakage, Makoto shrugged. He's built like a tank, so he might have an iron ass. We might miss a few targets. But generally speaking, we can collect samples from almost anyone. A bloody nose, a shaving accident, a scraped knee. Zetsu is the ultimate garbage man here. Kakuzu was staring at the board, doing mental math. He didn't care about the gross factor. He cared about the bottom line. This is why Hidan cannot know, Kakuzu said, his voice rumbling with approval. If that religious nutjob found out he was channeling his holy curse, using menstrual waste and hemorrhoid blood, he would lose his mind. Exactly, Makoto nodded. He would view it as the ultimate blasphemy. He'd probably try to kill us all. But if he doesn't know, Kakuzu's eyes glinted with greed. It's free, no risk, high reward. We tell him it's the blood of a virgin sacrifice or something. He's stupid enough to believe it. Sasori let out a low, mechanical chuckle. For the first time in my life, Sasori rasped, I am truly grateful that I turned myself into a puppet. I have no blood for you to collect, and I certainly don't have hemorrhoids. Chapter 4, Katsu. A small, controlled explosion turned Makoto's crude PowerPoint drawings into confetti. Deidara blew the smoke from his fingers, looking satisfied with his contribution for cleaning up the evidence. Minutes later, Hidan was allowed back inside. The Jushinist stomped in, shaking the rain off his cloak like a wet dog. He looked around, expecting to see Makoto's head on a spike or at least the guy cowering in fear. Instead, he saw something that unsettled him far more than violence. Respect. Kakuzu was looking at Makoto like he was a bag of gold coins. Sasori was listening intently. Even pain seemed to be giving the new guy space. The atmosphere had shifted from interrogation to strategy meeting. Hidan scratched his slicked back hair, squinting. Oi, what the hell happened in here? Did you guys join a cult or something? I mean, a different cult. Before Hidan could launch into another tirade, Makoto clapped his hands together. Welcome back, Hidan. Now that the room is whole again, let's move on. The Hidan protocol is our biological deterrent. But, Makoto paused, raising a finger, I have a second deterrent. One that targets the psychological and physical comfort of the 5 nations. It's a bit more troublesome to execute, but the payout is immense. Deidara perked up, leaning forward on his rock. Ooh, troublesome usually means explosive. Come on, spit it out. Who's the next victim? Which cage are we going to blow up? Deidara was practically vibrating. Konani. Makoto turned his head slowly, his eyes locking onto the angel of God. The cave went dead silent. Konan froze. It wasn't just the fact that he had singled her out. It was the honorific, nay, big sister. He said it with such casual familiarity, like he hadn't just met her an hour ago. Her heart skipped a beat, not out of romance, but out of sheer, unadulterated dread. She had just sat through his lecture on menstrual cycles and hemorrhoids. If he was calling on her next, it couldn't be good. Konan closed the distance between them in 2 strides. She placed a hand firmly on Makoto's shoulder, her amber eyes wide and pleading. Her stoic mask cracked completely. I am begging you, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of threat and desperation. Don't. Makoto looked at her hand, then back at her face. He gave her a reassuring, wholesome smile. Ah, I see. Since Konani is begging me so earnestly, I have no choice but to announce this plan to the entire group immediately. That is not what I meant. Konan hissed, her fingers tightening on his shoulder. She was torn. On one hand, She wanted to turn him into origami and burn him. On the other hand, his previous plan, insane as it was logically sound and benefited Nagato's vision. She was paralyzed by the terrifying possibility that he might actually be a genius. "Konani," Makoto asked, his voice turning professional. "Your paper ninjutsu, specifically, the dance of the Shikigami. Your disguise capabilities are top tier, right?" Konan hesitated. She let go of his shoulder and stepped back, regaining her composure. "It is decent." Decent was an understatement. She had prepared a sea of 600 billion explosive tags to kill Madara. Her paper could mimic trees, water, earth, even skin. If she wanted to hide something, God himself wouldn't find it. "Why?" she asked, her guard up. "Perfect," Makoto nodded. "Here is the plan. We utilize your paper disguise technique. We take millions of explosive tags and you disguise them." "Disguise them as what?" Sasori rasped. Makoto grinned. "As toilet paper." The silence in the cave was heavy enough to crush a tank. "We mix these disguised tags into the commercial shipments sent to the 5 great shinobi nations," Makoto continued, his voice rising with passion. "We flood the market, high quality, double ply softness. And when the daimyo, the cage, and the wealthy merchants sit down on their porcelain thrones, when they reach out to wipe their ass." Makoto threw his arms wide, mimicking Pain's signature pose. "Let the world know Pain." He then struck a pose that looked suspiciously like Deidara's. "Art as an explosion. ... A crow cawed somewhere outside the cave. The members of the Akatsuki stared at him. They were stunned, shocked. A few were horrified. "Why?" Hidan broke the silence, blinking rapidly. "Why did those last 2 sentences sound so cool when Leader and the blonde brat say them, but so wrong coming from you?" For once, Hidan had identified the problem perfectly. Deidara looked like he had swallowed a lemon. His face turned a shade of red that clashed with his cloak. "My line," Deidara whispered, clutching his chest. "He used my sublime artistic motto, for a poop joke. For blowing up someone's ass." Deidara felt a wave of nausea. It was like watching someone use a Picasso painting to clean up vomit. He looked at Konan with genuine sympathy. "I'm begging you," Deidara muttered, unconsciously repeating Conan's earlier plea. "Make him stop." "Get in line, Bomber," Makoto snapped, pointing a finger at the angel. "I am currently discussing the proprietary technology exclusive to Konani." Konan stood there. Her expression was a complex tapestry of emotions: helplessness, resignation, secondhand embarrassment, and a tiny, horrifying sliver of admiration. "I can do that," she thought. "I can actually do that. But, should I?" "No, absolutely not." A deep, furious roar shook the stalactites. Everyone jumped. They turned to see Kakuzu stepping forward, his fists clenched, veins bulging on his forehead. The Akatsuki members were stunned. Kakuzu, the man who would sell his own mother for a nickel. He was objecting. Was this a moral objection? Had they misjudged the old miser? Did he actually have a line he wouldn't cross? "Why?" Makoto and Konan asked in unison. They looked at each other, surprised by their synchronization. Kakuzu stomped over to Makoto, getting right in his face. His green eyes were burning with rage. "Do you have any idea," Kakuzu spat, "how much a single exploding tag costs to manufacture? The chakra-infused paper, the ink, it's expensive." He gestured wildly. "And do you know how much a roll of toilet paper costs? Pennies. You want to take a premium military asset and disguise it as a product that sells for nothing. The profit margins would be in the negatives. We would be bankrupt in a week. Have you even calculated the ROI? You idiot." Konan let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank God. For a second, she thought Kakuzu had figured out her secret stash of 600 billion tags. But no, he was just being cheap. Makoto sighed, shaking his head with pity. "Ah, Kakuzu, this is why you're still counting coins while I'm planning empires. Your view is too narrow." Kakuzu's eyes narrowed into slits. "My view is narrow. Boy, do you know how long I have lived? I fought the first Hokage. And, did you win?" Makoto shot back instantly. "Doesn't look like it. If you haven't lived 1,000 years, don't pull the seniority card on me. I'm talking economics." Kakuzu growled, but he didn't attack. The kid had nerve. "Listen," Makoto lectured, pacing back and forth. "I heard about your philosophy. Hidan asked why you don't kill the bounty station staff to steal their money. You said, sustainable development. That was smart. It's just that on this matter, you're still only seeing the immediate benefits, not the long-term development." Makoto held up 2 fingers. First, military spending. The money you save by hoarding tags will eventually become reparations paid to the Leaf when they kick our teeth in. You have to spend money to conquer the world, Kakuzu. Second, Makoto continued, remember the industrial plan for a megacar. Once the factories are running, we aren't just disguising tags. We are producing the toilet paper itself. We create a monopoly. Toilet paper from the land of fire might explode. Toilet paper from the land of lightning might explode. But Akatsuki brand toilet paper. Guaranteed safe, soft, durable. Makoto smiled wickedly. The 5 great nations will have to buy from us. We control the supply, and once we control the paper, we control the message. We print subtle propaganda on every sheet. When a daimyo is sitting on the toilet, what does he read? Our slogans, our ideals. We influence them at their most defensible moment. And, Makoto lowered his voice, glancing at the cave entrance where Hidan had been, if they choose not to buy our paper, they have to use sticks, or leaves, or cheap, rough paper. He looked meaningfully at Kakuzu. Rough paper causes scratches, scratches cause bleeding, and if they bleed. Makoto let the sentence hang in the air. Kakuzu froze. The gears in his head spun rapidly. If they bleed, Hidan gets the blood. It was a closed loop. A perfect ecosystem of commerce, violence, and terror. The plan connects, Deidara muttered, horrified. From top to bottom, from the industry to the rear end. It's ridiculous, but it works. I have another question, Kakuzu said, his anger replaced by cold calculation. What you said about the propaganda. You want the 5 nations to accept Akatsuki's ideals through toilet reading. That is fanciful. The moment we start hunting tailed beasts, we become public enemy number 1. No amount of soft paper will make them like us. The room went quiet. Pain shifted on his pedestal. Konan looked down. It was the elephant in the room. Their ultimate goal required global war. That brings me to the final item on the agenda, Makoto said. His playful demeanor vanished. He looked tired, serious, and dangerous. I have decided that the Akatsuki will abandon the plan to capture the tailed beasts to create a 10 tails deterrent. Quote. Payne's Rinnegan widened slightly. This was heresy. This was the foundation of everything they had built. But the person who reacted most violently wasn't Payne. It was the black blob attached to the white plant creature. Black Zetsu felt a chill of genuine terror. Abandon the plan. Black Zetsu's mind raced. I have spent 1,000 years manipulating Indra and Ashura's reincarnations. I manipulated Madara. I manipulated Obito. I manipulated Nagato. All to free Mother. And this random civilian walks in and says, let's stop. Black Zetsu decided, right then and there, that Makoto had to die. He would signal Obito tonight. This man was a variable he couldn't control. But then, Makoto spoke again. And what he said made Black Zetsu's brain short-circuit completely. The tailed beast weapon is inefficient, Makoto stated calmly. Our new plan is simple. We are going to unseal Kagaya Otsutsuki. Chapter 5. The name, Kagaya Otsutsuki, hung in the damp air like a curse. For most of the Akatsuki, the name meant absolutely nothing. It was just a collection of syllables. They exchanged glances that ranged from, who, to, do I get paid to care? But for one entity in the room, those syllables were like a tailed beast ball. Black Zetsu, the sentient shadow clinging to the white plantman, felt his non-existent heart stop. Who the fuck is this guy? Black Zetsu's mind was racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He had spent a millennium, literally 1,000 years, playing the long game. He had manipulated Indra. He had corrupted the Uchiha clan. He had whispered in Madara's ear, tricked Obito, and steered Nagato. He was the author of shinobi history, the ghost in the machine. He had never taken a partner. He had never shared his true plan. To him, humans were just tools, disposable batteries to be used and discarded. And now, some random civilian from the future walks in, lights a cigarette, and casually drops the name of his mother. The name that had been erased from history. He knows, Black Zetsu realized, panic rising like bile. As if hearing the screaming panic inside Zetsu's head, Makoto didn't immediately elaborate on Kagaya. He took a drag from his cigarette and addressed the room's confusion first. Right, I see the blank stares. Let me reintroduce myself properly, Makoto said, dusting ash off his sleeve. I am Makoto. I'm an archaeologist from 20 years in the future, and currently, the acting leader of a megacar. Future. Hidan just looked annoyed. What kind of bullshit is that? 20 years. You can ask Pain and Konani. I've already submitted my proof, Makoto said, shrugging effortlessly. All eyes turned to the leader. Pain stood on the statue's finger, his rinnegan glowing ominously in the gloom. He speaks the truth, Pain said, his voice devoid of doubt. I have confirmed the authenticity of his claims. There is no need for suspicion. Confirmed was a strong word. In reality, Nagato had looked at some photos and read a few letters. A smarter man would have used the human path to rip the memories out of Makoto's skull. But Nagato, well, let's just say he had a bad habit of trusting charismatic strangers with big dreams. It happened with Madara, it would happen with Naruto, and it was happening with Makoto now. Okay, so the boss says you're legit. Whatever, Hidan grumbled, leaning on his scythe. So, who is this Kagaya chick? Is she strong? The name Kagaya might be unfamiliar, Makoto said, pacing the floor like a professor addressing a class of delinquents. But you all know the Sage of Six Paths, right? Everyone nodded. That was Fairy Tale 101. Kagaya Otsutsuki, Makoto said, dropping the bomb, is the mother of the Sage of Six Paths. A ripple of shock went through the room. The sage had a mom. Deidara blinked. I thought he just, materialized out of pure chakra or something. Nope, she gave birth to him. And then, Makoto paused for dramatic effect, he and his brother sealed her away in the moon. Sealed his own mother. Deidara frowned, stroking his chin. That is harsh, Why, did she try to destroy the world? More or less, Makoto nodded. Ha, I knew it. Deidara pointed a finger at Hidan. See, even I have intuition. Wait, Hidan looked genuinely offended. You're saying the god of shinobi sealed his mom because she was evil? That's messed up. Family is family, man. Unless she refused to sacrifice people to Jashin. Then she deserved it. To be precise, Makoto corrected, Kagaya was preparing to cast a spell that would convert every human on the planet into a mindless biological weapon. She wanted an army without free will. Hidan's jaw dropped. That is pure evil. That's disgusting. Why the hell would we want to unseal a monster like that? The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here was Hidan, a man who ritualistically murdered people for a cult, taking the moral high ground against world domination. Don't get your panties in a twist, Hidan. Let me finish, Makoto waved him down. Based on my archaeological research, the Sage of Six Paths was an impatient idiot. He overreacted. If you actually use your brain, which I know is hard for some of you, you have to ask, why did she need soldiers? Makoto looked around the room. If she turns everyone on Earth into her army, who is she fighting? Herself. The cave went silent. It was a solid point. If you conquer the world and enslave everyone, the war is over. You don't build an army after you've already won. She wasn't building an army to conquer humans, Makoto explained. She was building an army to protect them. Protect them from what? Sasori asked, his interest piqued. Aliens, Makoto said flatly. Her own kin, the Otsutsuki clan. They are celestial parasites that travel from planet to planet, eating life. Kagaya betrayed them to save this world, and she knew they would eventually come back for her. Makoto gestured to the group. Now, consider the era. Back then, there were no ninja. No ninjutsu. Chakra belonged to Kagaya alone. Humans were just farmers with pitchforks. Turning a weak farmer into a biological weapon was a massive upgrade. It turned a peasant into a chunin. Strategically, it made sense. Makoto walked over to Deidara, looking him in the eye. But look at us now. The shinobi world has evolved. We have Kage. We have Jinchuriki. We have the Akatsuki. Each one of you is a Onman army capable of slaughtering thousands of those biological weapons. Makoto spread his hands. So, from a logical standpoint, if we unseal Kagaya today, why would she turn you into mindless drones? It would be turning a Kage into a common shinobi. It's a downgrade. It's a waste of resources. Kagaya isn't stupid. She doesn't need mindless soldiers anymore, she needs generals. She needs us. The Akatsuki members exchanged looks. The logic held up. Why turn Deidara or Hidan into a generic foot soldier? Slick bastard, Black Zetsu thought, narrowing his eye. Zetsu was torn. On one hand, Makoto was spewing bullshit. Kagaya didn't care about generals. She wanted her chakra back. She wanted to absorb everything. The infinite Tsukuyomi was a harvest. But on the other hand, Makoto was convincing them. He was aligning the Akatsuki with Zetsu's goal, even if his reasoning was flawed. So, Deidara mused, our goal changes from world peace through fear to reviving an alien goddess to fight other aliens. That sounds way more artistic. It's grander in scale. I don't know, Konan interjected, her voice laced with worry. The tailed beasts are hard enough to control. This Kagaya, if we revive her, are you certain she won't just kill us all? Are you sure she will cooperate? Don't worry about her personality, Makoto waved his hand dismissively. History books are very clear on this. He leaned in, grinning. Kagaya Otsutsuki is basically a simple-minded sweetheart. She's a shut-in with severe social anxiety and a mother complex. If you approach her nicely, flatter her a bit, and show her you're strong. She's a total pushover, easy to manipulate. Konan's eye twitched. A simple-minded sweetheart, he was talking about the progenitor of all chakra like she was a lonely housewife. I see, Konan muttered, deciding to shelve that absurdity for later. So, how do we do it? Reviving a god cannot be simple. It's not, Makoto admitted. There are two ways to revive Kagaya. Plan A and Plan B. Plan A, Makoto raised a finger. As the classic route, we collect the 9-tailed beasts. In the shadows, Black Zetsu froze. 2 ways. Black Zetsu's yellow eye widened in genuine shock. Wait, what does he mean, 2 ways? For 1,000 years, Zetsu had scoured the earth. He had read every stone tablet, deciphered every rune, and manipulated every bloodline. He had engineered the entire history of the ninja world to facilitate the revival of the 10 tails. That was the only way. If there was a second way, Zetsu would know about it. Is he bluffing? Zetsu thought, staring intently at Makoto. Or, is there something in the future that even I couldn't predict? Chapter 6. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Hidan slammed the butt of his scythe against the stone floor, the metallic clack echoing through the cavern. You just said, collect the tailed beasts, didn't you? That is literally the same plan we had 5 minutes ago. You just slapped a new label on it and called it, Plan A. Are you trying to scam us, you foray bastard? While Hidan was being his usual loudmouthed self, the smarter members of the room were exchanging heavy glances. Pain remained stoic, but inside the tower, Nagato's mind was racing. Konan's eyes narrowed. Collect the tailed beasts to revive Kagaya. It was too coincidental. The masked man, Madara, had given them the exact same objective. He claimed it was to create a weapon of peace. But if Makoto was right, was Madara actually trying to revive this alien goddess all along? Was the Akatsuki just a pawn in a game they didn't understand? Hidan, if you interrupt me one more time, I'm going to let Kakuzu sew your mouth shut, Makoto said, lighting a new cigarette. I said that was Plan A. The bad plan. Now, shut up and listen to Plan B. Makoto walked to the center of the room, smoke trailing from his lips. To understand Plan B, you need a history lesson. He looked at Black Zetsu. Kagaya Otsutsuki didn't come to this planet alone. She had a partner. Black Zetsu's visible eye widened. The Otsutsuki clan are cosmic farmers, Makoto explained, his voice echoing in the silence. They travel the universe planting 10-tail seedlings to harvest chakra fruits. But there is a rule to their gardening. A twisted rule. Makoto held up 2 fingers. The 10 tails is a beast that requires a sacrifice to bloom. One of the most crucial steps is for a member of the Otsutsuki clan to sacrifice themselves and be devoured by the 10 tails, allowing it to evolve into the god tree and bear fruit. Hidan just looked disgusted. That's metal. It's efficient, Makoto corrected. But Kagaya, she went off script. She betrayed her partner Otsutsuki Ashiki. She caught him off guard and fed his lower half to the 10 tails. She left him for dead. The Akatsuki listened, entranced. But Ashiki didn't die, Makoto whispered. He shrank himself down to the size of a microscopic flea and hid. He's been hiding in the shinobi world for 1,000 years, possessing the brain of a monk, waiting. Biding his time. Makoto swept his arm across the room. He is out there right now. A weakened, half-dead alien god. He is waiting for a vessel strong enough to hold his full power. And if he revives, he won't just enslave us. He will drain every drop of life from this planet. The shinobi world will be a husk floating in space. However, Makoto smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes. If we find Ashiki first, if we drag that parasite out of his hole and feed his body to the statue, the tree will bloom. He looked at Pain. We don't need to hunt the tailed beasts. We don't need to make enemies of the 5 nations. We just need to hunt one dying alien. We feed him to the statue, Kagaya gets her chakra back, and she returns. No world war needed. The silence that followed was absolute. But inside the mind of Black Zetsu, there was a sound like a nuclear siren. What? Black Zetsu felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. Ashiki, he survived. Mother didn't kill him. For 1,000 years, Zetsu had been playing 4D chess. He had started wars, manipulated bloodlines, corrupted Indra, and whispered lies to Madara Uchiha. He had worked tirelessly to set up the infinite Tsukuyomi because he thought it was the only way. I didn't know, Zetsu realized, stunned. I was born the moment Mother was sealed. I didn't know Ashiki was alive. If Makoto was telling the truth, then Zetsu's entire existence had been a waste of time. He didn't need to make the world hate the Akatsuki. He didn't need to trick Obito. He could have just rallied the entire ninja world under the banner of Alien Hunt, found this Ashiki guy, fed him to the ghetto statue, and boom, Mother returns. He could have been the hero of the story and saved his mom. I am an idiot, Black Zetsu thought, staring blankly at the floor. So that is the origin of the 10 tails. Pain murmured, his god complex taking a hit. Hold on, Deidara spoke up, scratching his head. Is this really necessary? Are these Otsutsuki guys really that strong? We have to go through all this trouble to revive a grandma just to fight them. Can't we just, blow them up ourselves? Yeah, Hidan agreed, swinging his scythe. I'll curse the bastard. 1 drop of blood and he's done. Makoto looked at them with pity. Almost every member of the Otsutsuki clan has a standard ability, Makoto said flatly. They can absorb chakra. All of it. Deidara, your C4. Absorbed. Sasori, your puppet strings. Severed. Konan, your paper. Eaten. Makoto leaned back against the stone wall. In the future, Otsutsuki Ashiki revives. And the 2 strongest ninja in history fought him. He tossed them around like ragdolls. He broke them. The only reason they won was because one of them burned his own life force away just to stall for some time and wear him down. Deidara's mouth hung open. They absorb everything. Everything based on chakra, Makoto confirmed. So unless you plan to punch him to death with 0 ninjutsu, you're useless. The strongest ninja in history. A deep, gravelly voice interrupted. Kakuzu stepped forward. His green eyes were skeptical. How do these ninja compare to the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju? The room went quiet. Of course Kakuzu would ask that. The man's entire identity was that he had fought the god of shinobi and lived. To Kakuzu, Hashirama was the ceiling of power. Makoto paused. This was a minefield. He knew the truth. The internet joked that Kakuzu threw a shuriken from 800 miles away and ran. The reality was probably that Hashirama pitied him, or Kakuzu fought a wood clone and barely escaped. If Makoto told the truth, Kakuzu, Hashirama would treat you like a toddler, and Ashiki would treat Hashirama like an ant, Kakuzu's ego would shatter. Or worse, he wouldn't believe it. He needed a metric they could understand. Hashirama Senju was strong, Makoto said carefully. His true several thousand hands statue deals physical damage, so it would actually be effective against an Otsutsuki. Kakuzu puffed his chest out slightly. See, I survived that. However, Makoto continued, crushing the moment. The people Ashiki defeated, one of them could control all 9-tailed beasts instantly with a single glance. Without a summoning contract, without breaking a sweat. Kakuzu froze. He was from the hidden waterfall. He knew the 7 tails. He knew the horror of a tailed beast bomb. Controlling all 9 instantly. That was beyond Hashirama. Then, we really do need to change the plan, Pain said, his voice heavy. Nagato felt the weight of reality crushing his ambitions. His plan to use the tailed beasts as a deterrent was a joke. The 10 tails wasn't a weapon, it was just a seedling. Against an Otsutsuki invasion, his Pain would be nothing more than an annoyance. How boring, Sasori's rasping voice echoed from his puppet. Your new plan is to pin all our hopes on a woman from the sky. We revive her, and then what? We hide behind her skirt while she fights. That is pathetic. The morale in the cave plummeted. They were Shrank criminals, the most feared organization in the world. Being told they were essentially ants in a war of gods was a hard pill to swallow. No, I never thought that, Makoto said softly. He walked to the edge of the light, looking at the downtrodden faces of these monsters. I know what you're thinking. Why bother? We are doomed. Some of you probably wish I never told you the truth. Makoto took a drag of his cigarette, the smoke curling up into the darkness. There's an old story, Makoto began, his voice taking on a philosophical rhythm. Imagine an iron house. It has no windows, and it is indestructible. Inside, there are many people sound asleep. They are going to suffocate to death, passing from sleep to oblivion without feeling a thing. He looked at Pain. If I shout now, and I wake up a few of the lighter sleepers, they will wake up only to realize they are trapped. They will suffer the agony of knowing their impending doom. Is that a kindness, or is it cruelty? The cave was silent. Even Hidan had stopped fidgeting. I asked myself that before I came back, Makoto admitted. But then I figured it out. If I wake a few of you up, if even a few of us are awake and banging on the walls, you can never say there is zero hope of breaking the iron house. Konan looked at Makoto, her eyes softening. It was a grim metaphor. But for people like them, people who had lived in the rain, in war, in the darkness, it resonated. It wasn't about guaranteed victory. It was about the refusal to die in your sleep. Whoa, Deidara broke the silence, giving a thumbs up. That was, weirdly deep. Are you a part-time poet? That was way better than Sasori's lectures on eternal beauty. Shut up, brat, Sasori grunted, but there was no venom in it. Even the puppet master seemed thoughtful. If Kisame Hoshigaki had been there, he likely would have defected from Toby right then and there. Kisame hated lies. He hated the false world. Makoto offered the harsh, brutal, naked truth. That was all Kisame ever wanted. Besides, Makoto grinned, shaking off the heavy atmosphere. The Otsutsuki aren't invincible. They bleed. They die. He looked at the group, his confidence returning. Do you know how a Shiki dies in the future? It wasn't some god-tier jutsu. Makoto held up a single finger. It was a shadow clone. A simple, academy-level shadow clone trick. He was outsmarted by a ninja who refused to give up. In their resurrection, Makoto scoffed. Compared to Orochimaru's curse marks or Sasori's puppet transfer, it's crude. It takes too long. It has too many conditions. Chapter 7. The meeting was finally winding down. Those who agree to scrap the current plan and switch to the Makoto plan, stay put, Pain announced, his gaze sweeping over the freaks gathered below him. Those who disagree, take a step back. Silence. Not a single person moved a muscle. It was impressive, really. Makoto's speech had actually managed to convince a room full of shrank criminals. Sasori was probably the most indifferent about the whole thing. The guy had turned himself into a literal human puppet. He didn't have the hormones for ambition or strong desires anymore. Changing the plan, keeping the plan, he couldn't give less of a shit either way, so he just stayed put to save energy. The real hard sell was supposed to be Black Zetsu. Zetsu might be an evil bastard, but he wasn't an idiot. Makoto had laid out the pros and cons so clearly that the choice was obvious. Besides, Zetsu actually bought Makoto's story. First off, if this new guy was lying, what was the endgame? There was no benefit for him. Second, Makoto had said the job of hunting down a Shiki Otsutsuki would fall to Zetsu. That meant Zetsu would be the first to know if this was bullshit or not. Hey, so what the hell are we supposed to do now, Deidara broke the silence. Kakuzu runs the economy and fixes a megacor's finances, while Zetsu go out and fetch materials, Makoto answered, ticking points off his fingers. The rest of you, you're free agents. You can go help Kakuzu if you're bored, or just keep doing whatever you usually do. Train, invent new jutsu, jerk off, I don't care. Just stay sharp. Makoto knew that before Shippuden kicked off, the Akatsuki didn't have much on their schedule anyway. There was no point micromanaging them. Besides, he knew none of them were going to help Kakuzu. These guys were allergic to teamwork. They would probably go off on their own to research ninja techniques, train, or something of the sort. After all, the pressure of the Otsutsuki clan now loomed over them. Fine, Deidara mumbled, looking stressed. Makoto's description of these Otsutsuki aliens had reignited a sense of crisis in the bomber. Deidara had already been busting his ass training to counter Itachi's Mangekyo, but now he felt like even that wasn't enough. Wait, Itachi, yo, about today's business. Deidara spoke up again. Itachi and Kisame aren't here. Who's gonna break the news to those two? I'll handle it, Makoto said. The next mission requires their specific skill set anyway, so I'll just catch them up on the way. Are you talking about the Land of Waves job? Kakuzu asked, narrowing his eyes. He'd been quiet this whole time. When Makoto said nobody else had tasks, Kakuzu had been wondering why the hell that Land of Waves mission wasn't given to him. Before, he would have assumed Makoto was trying to screw him over. Now, after that longest speech, he just thought Makoto might have forgotten about it after talking so much. The land of waves sits right between the land of water and the land of fire, Makoto explained, anticipating the greed. If we just wanted to rob that Gato guy blind, I'd send you, Kakuzu. But we want sustainable development. For that, it's better to send someone from the Leaf and the Mist. Leaf and Mist, what a coincidence, considering who's on that team, Kakuzu grumbled. Whatever, just call me when you need me to count the money. He paused, a practical thought hitting him. Wait, leader, the new guy doesn't have a ring. How do we contact him? Itachi and Kisame are moving with him, Pain said, his voice flat. They can handle communications. Fine. With that, the meeting was officially adjourned. As everyone scattered, Konan intercepted Makoto. You know Itachi is a spy, yet you're still planning to go on a mission alone with them. Konan was very concerned for Makoto's safety. Makoto's life was now the future of a Megakure in the Akatsuki. Losing him wasn't an option. That was always part of the plan. With a spy, you either kill them or you use them. You can't just let them hang around in limbo, Makoto shrugged. If they find something out, it puts us at a disadvantage. So that's why you didn't have us kill him or kick him out. Konan frowned. As long as our interests align and we have a common enemy, anyone can be a teammate. Don't worry about me, even if I were an ordinary person with no chakra and no ninja techniques, I could still handle him. Makoto smiled, and it wasn't arrogance. It was a fact. Smart, rational people were easy to predict. It was the underlying logic of the shinobi world. The more intelligent and calm someone was, the less dangerous they were to someone like Makoto. The only person who had actually tried to kill him so far was Hidan. If Makoto really was just a normal guy, he would have passed Pain's test, passed everyone else's test, and then gotten his head chopped off by the religious nutjob. Even Kakuzu, crazy as he was, could weigh the pros and cons and realize Makoto's brain was worth more than his heart. Besides, Makoto wasn't exactly a normal person. Fine, she sighed, defeat evident in her voice. But take this. She raised her hand. A bouquet of paper flowers materialized from her sleeve. They were pale yellow, waterproof, and infused with a faint trace of her chakra. If you die, she muttered, shoving them into his chest, I'm not cleaning up the mess. Understood. 3 days later, on the border of the land of fire. Two figures in straw hats sat at a tea shop, resting. What is so damn great about these sticky rice balls? Makoto asked, walking over from the stall next door. He was holding a cup of Odin, looking unimpressed. Why does everyone in this world love dango so much? He sat down directly opposite the two rogue ninjas. You the new strategist the leader wouldn't shut up about. Kisame stared at Makoto with his dead, shark-like eyes. That's me. I assume you've already got the mission specs Pain sent over. To assist you and fulfill all your requests, Itachi cut in smoothly, interrupting him. Before Makoto had walked up, Itachi had been debating whether to hit this strategist with a genjutsu to test him. After thinking it through, he scrapped the idea. According to Pain, the entire organization had voted to approve this guy. If Itachi attacked him now, he'd just be painting a target on his back and risking his cover as a spy. Genjutsu was the quick way to get info, but it wasn't the only way. They were going to be traveling together, Itachi would have plenty of time to pick him apart slowly. So, Itachi played the role of the loyal soldier. Kisame respected Itachi. Seeing his partner fall in line, the shark man didn't push it. He just nodded at Makoto, signaling he'd follow orders too. Good, Makoto said, taking a bite of his Odin. You two missed the big meeting since you were out on a job. We'll head out in a minute. Once we're somewhere private, I'll explain everything to you again. Of course, when Makoto said, explain everything, he meant a heavily edited version of the truth. The vague promise sparked a little curiosity in the two shrank criminals. They finished their dango quickly, and the three of them set off down the road. Chapter 8, The Shinobi World, from the Future. An invasion by the Otsutsuki clan. You're saying the whole world is screwed. After listening to Makoto's bombshell explanation, Itachi and Kisame fell into a heavy silence, trying to process the insanity of what they'd just heard. Makoto claimed he was from the future. Unlike the big meeting where he used logic, this time he didn't bother trying to prove it with evidence. He just dropped the fact on the table and let it sit there. Then came the details. the Otsutsuki invasion. The shift in Akatsuki's goal from collecting tailed beasts to recruiting heavy hitters. The plan to revive Kagaya Otsutsuki. Is this really the state of the world? Kisame broke the silence, sounding a mix of amused and skeptical. Though, if you went and told the 5 great nations that aliens are coming to kill us all, they wouldn't believe a damn word of it, would they? Exactly, Makoto nodded. That's why the 5 great nations are still our enemies for now. We have to operate in the shadows. If we weaken their military strength now, then when we face the Otsutsuki later. Itachi trailed off, his eyes scanning Makoto's face for a reaction. Itachi, let me ask you something else, Makoto interrupted, ignoring the strategic rambling. For the future of the shinobi world, are you capable of making some sacrifices? Can you compromise? Itachi frowned. He opened his mouth to agree, but stopped himself. Wait, I'm supposed to be a villain. Realizing a quick yes would break his character, he swallowed the words and stayed silent. Strategist, quit speaking in riddles, Kisame interjected, stepping in. Why don't you just tell Itachi-san exactly what you need him to do? Once he knows the cost, he can decide if it's worth it. Fair enough. Makoto walked ahead, hands in his pockets, a faint, knowing smile playing on his lips. Itachi, you still have a little brother back in the leaf, right? What are your thoughts on him? Itachi stopped dead in his tracks. He slowly turned his head. He is my spare set of eyes. My new light. Yeah, about that. Makoto stopped and turned to face him. I'm sorry, Itachi, but for the sake of the future, I can't let you do that. Makoto's acting was mysterious. The expression, the posture, the tone, if this were the Boruto era, the guy would be an international movie star. What do you mean? Itachi narrowed his eyes. Remember the core principle of the Akatsuki's new plan. We need combatants, Makoto explained. As one of the strongest fighters 20 years from now, his power and character are legendary. He's known as the supporting shadow of the hidden leaf. Even though he and the Hokage eventually take a beating from the Otsutsuki, a bad one, I might add, Sasuke is an asset we cannot afford to lose. Now it was Itachi's turn to put on a show. What is a supporting shadow? Itachi asked, forcing his face into a mask of disgust and confusion. Inside, however, his heart was doing backflips. Supporting shadow, protecting the village. The relief was overwhelming. Not only was he hearing about Sasuke's future success, but if Makoto was telling the truth, the Akatsuki's new goal had just shifted from evil organization I'm spying on to accidental allies. Especially regarding Sasuke. In the future, Sasuke leaves the village to travel the world, hunting down intel on the Otsutsuki, Makoto said, painting the picture. He protects the leaf from the shadows, like a second Hokage. Hence, the supporting shadow. But really, he's protecting the world. The Otsutsuki don't care about villages, they want to destroy the planet. As he spoke, Makoto reached into his waist pouch and pulled out a scroll. Poof! A deck of cards appeared in his hand. He shuffled through them, picked one out, and flicked it toward Itachi. In the peaceful era of the future, a company makes these fierce ninja cards. This one is a super rare collectible. Itachi caught the card. It showed the profile of a middle-aged man with black hair covering one eye. The other cards all featured full frontal images of the characters, seemingly posed intentionally. Only this one of Sasuke was just a side profile. If not for the familiarity between brothers, even people in the Hidden Leaf village who had seen Sasuke now might not be able to recognize him. But Itachi saw it. Even with the hair covering half the face, his Sharingan caught the detail in the visible eye. Is that a Rinnegan? The existence of this ridiculous merchandise actually made Itachi believe Makoto more. A Rinnegan. Kisame leaned over, staring at the card. Itachi's little brother is going to have the same eyes as the leader. That's right, Makoto confirmed. As for how he gets it, you'll find out during this mission. Don't get impatient. Makoto's words, the unspoken meaning was that he wouldn't tell them now. I can let go of my intent to kill Sasuke, Itachi said slowly, putting the card away. He looked like a man who had just wrestled with a massive internal demon. If the world is destroyed, I die too. It's logical. In that case, strategist, what is the organization's plan for him? Plan? There is no big master plan, Makoto shrugged. We just help him avoid some detours and make sure he gets stronger, faster. Understood. After a full day and night of travel, the trio had crossed the land of fire. They moved from the northwest border to the east, finally nearing their destination. They found a quiet inn to crash for the night. While the others rested, Itachi was still awake, staring at the ceiling, dissecting everything Makoto had said. First, the credibility, the Otsutsuki story, the future origin, it all fit too well. It was highly likely to be true. The only nagging doubt left in Itachi's mind was personal. Does Makoto know I'm a spy? Does he know I love Sasuke? After turning it over in his head for an hour, Itachi gave up. It didn't matter whether Makoto knew or not, as long as he didn't interfere, the outcome was the same. Even if Makoto was playing him like a fiddle, catering to his desires to keep him compliant, so what? If the direction was correct, Itachi had nothing to complain about. Meanwhile, in the other bed, Makoto was sleeping like a baby. Sometimes, intelligence is the most terrifying weapon. Because Makoto understood the specific psychology and trauma of every Akatsuki member, he could play them like pieces on a shogi board. Take Itachi, for instance. Makoto had to tell him the world was ending. He had to paint a picture of total destruction. Why? Because people like Itachi, Minato, or Naruto are stubborn idealists. If you told them you were from the future, their first instinct would be to protect the timeline. They would resist changing history, fearing the butterfly effect. Unless it was an apocalypse. Unless the world was absolutely, undeniably doomed. Only then would they agree to change the past. Only then would they accept that sacrifices, even their own beliefs, were necessary to save the future. Chapter 9. No wonder we got sent on this job. Looks like the players on the board are from both the Mist and the Leaf. It was the second day of their journey. Kisame had picked up a spike in chakra ahead, the unmistakable signature of a battle. He'd used a water-style jutsu to slip through the river, take a peek, and slide back to report. And it looks like your little brother is invited to the party, Itachi, Kisame added, grinning. Sasuke. Itachi shot a glance at Makoto. He had to wonder, did Makoto know? Did this man from the future orchestrate this whole trip just so they'd run into Sasuke? Some time ago, during an Akatsuki meeting with Makoto, the reason given for sending Itachi and Kisame away was to have them scout for intelligence on the Hidden Leaf Village. Itachi had used that chance to check on his brother, confirming that Sasuke had graduated and become a genin. But he hadn't expected a fresh genin to be thrown into a mess like this. Of course, Itachi had thought about forcing Sasuke to grow stronger, not wanting to treat him like a flower in a greenhouse. But he also knew that too much of a good thing could be bad, especially when it came to life and death situations. He was well aware of that. According to Kisame, 2 Chunin had already attacked the team. That bumped the mission from a crank straight to a brank. If more enemies showed up, especially Jonin, this was going to turn into an Arank nightmare. A genin on an Arank mission. That was a death sentence. Enemy Jonin didn't hold back against kids. The only silver lining was the squad leader. Kisame had identified him as Kakashi Hatake. With the copy ninja there, Sasuke's survival was at least guaranteed. Kisame seemed to think so too. With Kakashi babysitting, the kid should be fine. So, what's the play? Do we tail them, or cut past them and head straight to the land of waves? Do you two really trust that Ninja World celebrity, Hatake 50/50, that much? Makoto asked, raising an eyebrow. When I was still in the Hidden Leaf, I once carried out a mission with Kakashi in the Anbu. Kakashi's skills are quite decent, Itachi said, confused by the strange nickname. Tell you what, we'll split up, Makoto decided, ignoring Itachi's defense of his former captain. Itachi, you go to the land of waves first and make contact with the mission client, and gather some intelligence while you're at it. Kisame and I will stay here and follow them. He offered no further explanation. Fine, Itachi agreed, though he was hesitant. But be careful, with Kakashi's experience, tailing them without being spotted will be near impossible. Who said anything about hiding? Makoto smirked. Kisame, let's move. Huh, Kisame blinked, taken aback. He turned to look at Itachi, but his partner had already dissolved into a murder of crows and vanished into the sky. Shrugging, the shark man hefted his sword and hurried after Makoto. Team Kakashi. They had just finished their first, filler episode, battle. Naruto, who had frozen up like a coward just minutes ago, had just dramatically stabbed his own hand with a kunai, swearing an oath to never be afraid again. Then Kakashi dryly reminded him that if he didn't stop the bleeding, he'd bleed out and die. Naruto instantly panicked, screaming for help. It was a classic, light-hearted scene. But in the next second, the laughter died in Kakashi's throat. His lazy, smiling eyes snapped wide open, turning razor-sharp as he looked toward the woods. Two figures walked out into the open. Kakashi didn't recognize the young man in front. But the monster walking behind him. The slashed-out mist forehead protector. The massive, bandaged greatsword on his back. Kakashi's mind raced back to the demon brothers they had just dispatched. They were mist rogue ninjas too. This was an escalation. Sasuke, Naruto, Sakura, get in formation and... They're enemies, right, Kakashi-sensei, watch this. Before Kakashi could finish his order, Naruto, high on adrenaline, decided to charge straight at Makoto. Naruto, you idiot, Sasuke cursed under his breath. He had no choice but to leap forward, throwing a shuriken to cut off Kisame's path. He had to stop Naruto from getting pincered. Even from here, Sasuke could tell the shark guy in the back was way out of their league. Kakashi moved instantly. Facing a monster like Kisame, Kakashi couldn't afford to read his porn book and play a cool teacher. This was life or death. His target was Makoto. Kakashi's instincts were screaming at him. The man in front didn't look like a ninja, but his status was clearly higher than the swordsman behind him. Take out the leader, end the fight, save Naruto. It was the only play. Kakashi lunged with a kunai, closing the distance in a blur. However, Naruto, who had tried to tackle Makoto, suddenly tripped and slid face-first into the dirt, looking confused. Kakashi landed exactly where Makoto had been standing, kunai slashing through empty air. He froze. Where did he go? See, Kisame, I told you people have too much respect for this 50-50 guy. Attacking without even checking if we're friends or foes. Makoto's voice drifted from the other side of the clearing. Kakashi and Naruto whipped their heads around. Makoto was now standing casually next to Tazuna, the bridge builder they were supposed to be protecting. Sakura was the only one guarding the old man. When Makoto suddenly materialized next to her, she froze in sheer terror. She tried to raise a fist, but Makoto simply reached out and caught her wrist, stopping her effortlessly. Are you saying you aren't enemies? Kakashi asked, his voice heavy with suspicion. He was rattled, because even after coming to his senses, he still hadn't detected how Makoto had appeared behind them. A body replacement jutsu leaves smoke or logs. A body flicker leaves a blur. Makoto had left nothing. It wasn't just that there were no traces on the ground. There were no traces in Kakashi's memory. It was as if Makoto had simply been edited out of one spot and pasted into another. Realizing he was outmatched in speed, or whatever the hell that was, Kakashi decided to play along. That's right, Makoto said, letting go of Sakura's wrist and pointing a thumb at the trembling bridge builder. One of our mission objectives is also to make sure this old drunk gets to the land of waves in one piece. Kakashi slowly lowered his kunai, turning a deadly glare toward Tazuna. Tazuna-san, Kakashi growled, not only did you lie about the mission rank, but you hired multiple teams without telling us. Kakashi was pissed. They had just grilled Tazuna for hiding the fact that ninja were hunting him. The third Hokage made an exception to this crank mission be assigned to these genin because a jonin was leading the team. But then the demon brothers showed up, making it a prank. Tazuna's excuse was that he was too broke to pay for a prank mission. And now, another squad shows up claiming they were hired too. This is what you call poor. You can't afford the village fee, but you can hire mercenaries. Tazuna looked genuinely bewildered. He was a liar and a master guilt tripper, sure, but he actually didn't know what was going on. He opened his mouth to explain, but his survival instincts kicked in. His eyes darted around, and he decided to pivot. I really don't know anything about this. Maybe someone back in the village got worried that a bunch of genin couldn't protect me, so they sold their family heirlooms to hire a backup. Wah, my life is so hard. Tazuna burst into fake, noisy tears, snot running down his nose. The old bastard realized the genin were soft-hearted kids, so he decided to double down on the pity party. Chapter 10, quote. That old geezer isn't lying to you. Kisame spoke up suddenly. He was clutching a crumpled piece of paper in his hand, squinting at a few lines of text scrawled on it. It was the script Makoto had handed him after they caught up. Apparently, these were his lines. As soon as the Sharkman spoke, everyone's eyes snapped to him. For the mission reward, Kisame continued, reading from the paper with zero enthusiasm, we only took one ryo. Fortunately, Kisame naturally possessed deadfish eyes and a flat, emotionless voice. He didn't need to act, he just needed to be himself. What? Tazuna and Team Kakashi stared in disbelief. 1 ryo, even a bowl of ramen cost 60. What the hell can you do with 1 ryo? Buy a single piece of cheap candy. Were they some kind of charity organization? Hee hee, old man, Kisame chuckled dryly, glancing back at the script before looking at Tazuna. You have a daughter-in-law named Tsunami, right? Nani, what did you do to Tsunami? Tazuna snapped out of his confusion instantly. A look of horror dawned on his face as he screamed, his expression twisting into grief and resentment. We didn't do anything, Kisame droned on. I can only say that Tsunami, she's very busty. As he said the word, Kisame improvised and licked his lips. It was terrifying. Wah, we're finished. We've suffered so much. Tazuna burst into tears, wailing at the sky. Old man, Kisame continued, ignoring the crying. You also have a grandson named Inari, right? What, Inari? What happened to my precious grandson? Hearing the name, Tazuna instantly cut off his wailing. His eyes bulged. Evidently, his daughter-in-law was important, but his grandson was the apple of his eye. His son was dead, and Tsunami had remarried, but Inari was his blood. He is also very supple. Hua, quote. Wah, my poor grandson. Tazuna froze for a second, processing the implication. He sized up Kisame, blue skin, gills, shark eyes, and realized that this freak looked exactly like the type of monster who would do unspeakable things. Despair flooded his heart. He started howling and wailing again, and this time, the tears were 100% genuine. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto whispered, tugging on his teacher's vest. What does very supple mean? And are you sure those two aren't enemies? That's not something you need to understand right now, Naruto, Kakashi sighed, rubbing his temples. As for them, it seems they aren't enemies. If they were, they've had a dozen chances to kill the client already. Kakashi stepped forward, glancing at the sobbing bridge builder. Tazuna-san, please shut up for a moment. If I'm not mistaken, these two possess a very dark sense of humor. Once the noise died down, Kakashi turned his sharp gaze to Makoto. What is your goal here? Do you expect us to abandon the mission and hand it over to you? Huh, no way, Kakashi-san, MMPH. Naruto panicked, thinking his first big mission was being stolen. He opened his mouth to scream, but Sasuke reacted instantly, whipping a soldier pill into Naruto's open mouth like a shuriken. Gulp. Naruto choked, effectively silenced. Your mission is simply to escort this old drunk to the land of waves, correct? Makoto asked calmly. Quote. The details are confidential, but since you asked, as the Jonin in charge, I can confirm that is correct. Then it doesn't matter if you give it up or not, Makoto shrugged. Our objectives don't conflict. However, I'll give you a friendly reminder. Among your enemies this time is a member of the 7 ninja swordsmen. Quote. Thank you for the intel, Kakashi said, his eye narrowing. I need to discuss this with my team. Give us a moment. Go ahead. Kakashi dragged Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura into a bushes a few meters away. Naturally, Tazuna was left standing there, alone and miserable. While the genin argued, Kakashi ran the numbers in his head. They said the enemy is a swordsman. They probably took this 1 ryo mission just to hunt the target. That explains why they're tagging along. They're using us as bait to draw out the enemy. Kakashi-sensei, we finally got a real mission, we can't quit now. Naruto shouted, ruining the stealth of the huddle. Sasuke, Sakura, say something. You wanna go back to pulling weeds and chasing that fat lady's cat? Kakashi winced. The other two looked dark. The secret meeting was now pointless. I agree with the dead last, Sasuke said, glancing over his shoulder at Kisame and Makoto. He had a brother to kill, he wasn't going to get stronger by chasing cats. He couldn't back down. To agree too, Sakura stammered. She actually wanted to quit immediately, but if Sasuke was staying, she had to stay. Alright then, Kakashi nodded and turned back to the pair. Gentlemen, he didn't need to say anything else. Naruto had screamed their decision loud enough for the next village to hear. Kisame, use a transformation jutsu, Makoto secretly ordered. You and Samahata are walking billboards. Too conspicuous. Kisame nodded, performing the signs. The group set off again. A day passed. They reached the river that bordered the land of waves. Kakashi was standing on the water's surface, lecturing the three genin on chakra control, when a thick, unnatural fog began to roll in. Kakashi's head snapped toward the riverbank where Makoto and Kisame were sitting, eating rations. They didn't do this. It's a third party. Be careful, Kakashi shouted to his team, crouching into a defensive stance. Enemy attack. On the bank, Makoto and Kisame didn't even stand up. Kakashi realized he was on his own for this one. This hidden mist jutsu is the signature move of Kurigakure, right? Makoto asked, taking a bite of a rice ball while watching the fog thicken. So, how do you guys actually see the enemy in this fog? We don't, Kisame replied, bored. We rely on other senses. Sound, smell, bloodlust. We train one sense to its peak to assassinate targets in the blind spots. So, Makoto chewed thoughtfully. If you run into a Hyuga with a Byakugan, isn't using the hidden mist basically just blinding yourself while the enemy can still see you perfectly? Kisame paused, looking awkward. Well, yes. No wonder the Mist Village treats that one stolen Byakugan like a national treasure, Makoto laughed. Though that Gyao hasn't really developed it much. He just uses it like a fancy pair of binoculars. Kisame grunted. The chakra signature, it's definitely Zabuza. By the way, Makoto asked, looking at his partner. When you guys hold auditions for the 7 Ninja Swordsmen, is the #1 requirement that your name has to be a fruit? Kisame stared at him, speechless. Momochi, peach. Hoshigaki, persimmon. Ringo, apple. It sounded stupid, but it was true. Obviously, the selection was based on murder skills and chakra reserves. Abstract nonsense like, fruit names, shouldn't matter. But, believe it or not, every single one of them had a fruit in their name. It was like some invisible author was pulling the strings of fate just for a pun. While they were chatting, the battle on the water was reaching its climax. Kakashi had outmaneuvered the demon of the mist. He had Zabuza pinned. Now, clang. Just as Kakashi was about to drive a kunai into Zabuza's throat to finish him off, a massive blur intercepted him. Kisame was there. Samahata, still wrapped in bandages, slammed into Kakashi's kunai, blocking the death blow effortlessly. What? Kakashi gasped, jumping back. Up in the trees, a masked boy holding Senbon needles froze. He had been just about to throw the needles to put Zabuza into a fake death state to save him. Now, he didn't know what to do. His script had just been shattered. Chapter 11. They really do have other objectives. Kakashi wasn't surprised by Kisame's sudden betrayal. He had been waiting for the other shoe to drop. In the next second, he saw Makoto step in front of him. Kakashi's expression tightened instantly. They had only exchanged a single, brief blow before, which wasn't enough to gauge the man's true capabilities. Now, with his Sharingan already active from the fight with Zabuza, Kakashi decided to test him properly. His 3-tomo Sharingan locked onto Makoto. Makoto, seemingly giving the copy ninja plenty of face, raised his hands and began forming seals. Kakashi immediately mirrored him. Hey, kid, watch out. Zabuza shouted from behind Kisame, clutching his wounds. That's Kakashi of the Sharingan. He'll copy your jutsu and use it against you. However, what kind of technique requires this many hand seals? A drop of cold sweat slid down Kakashi's forehead. He was worried, but he didn't dare stop. His Sharingan tracked Makoto's hands with microscopic precision. He could read the subtle tension in Makoto's muscles, predicting the next seal before it was even formed, allowing him to weave the signs slightly faster than the original user. It was the exact same trick he had just used to humiliate Zabuza. Finally, they reached the end of the sequence. Reaper Death Seal. Reaper Death Say, what? Kakashi, full of confidence, finished the seals a split second before Makoto and shouted the technique's name in unison. But the moment the words left his mouth, his heart nearly stopped. The Reaper Death Seal. Kakashi didn't know the hand seals for that specific forbidden jutsu, but he certainly knew the name. His teacher, Namikaze Minato, had used it to seal the 9 tails. It was a suicide technique, a guaranteed death sentence for the user in exchange for taking the enemy with them. Genuine terror flooded Kakashi's system. He froze, waiting for the spectral Shinigami to appear and rip his soul out. Seconds passed. No chakra fluctuation, no Shinigami, nothing. Were you scared? Makoto grinned, shaking out his wrists. Will you dare to recklessly copy jutsu again? And cast them ahead of time, no less. Quote. Kakashi's face darkened. He stared at Makoto, realizing he had just been played. What a fucked up personality. But as the adrenaline faded, Kakashi realized the man had a point. If an enemy knew how the Sharingan worked, they could bait him into copying a self-destruction technique. By copying it faster than the opponent, he would effectively kill himself first. Having figured this out, Kakashi became even more confused. This man had just deliberately exposed a fatal weakness in his fighting style. Was he an enemy or a teacher? Bwahahaha, to think the great Kakashi would be toyed with by a brat. Seeing Kakashi's blunder, Zabuza threw his head back and laughed wildly. An idiot who needs 44 hand seals just to summon a water dragon has no right to laugh at others, Makoto shot back without looking at him. Zabuza's laughter died instantly, choking in his throat. Kisame, Zabuza growled, his mood ruined. Is he your subordinate? No, Kisame replied casually, resting Samahata on his shoulder. I suppose I'm his. What? Zabuza frowned, assessing Makoto with a new look of wariness. Before he could question them further, the masked figure hiding in the trees finally made his move. Haku leapt out, landing between the groups. Come to think of it, Zabuza really was a terrifying character. At the end of the war, facing Kagaya Otsutsuki, the lineup was Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi, and a masked man, Obito. Now, facing Zabuza, it was the exact same team configuration. Who's there? Kakashi snapped, raising a kunai defensively. Greetings. I am a hunterman from the hidden mist Anbu. Haku recited his pre-planned lines, his voice muffled by the mask. My mission is to capture the rogue ninja Zabuza Momochi and retrieve the executioner's blade. Could you please hand this person over to me? That is indeed the mask of the mist Anbu. Kakashi muttered, but his eyes were deadpan. He was speechless at the sheer audacity of this performance. If it were just Zabuza, the story might hold water. But Kisame was standing right there. Kisame was a notorious Shrank rogue ninja from the mist, currently helping Zabuza. Why would a mist hunterman ask for permission politely when a fellow rogue was aiding the target? Haku, you idiot, stop talking, Zabuza sighed, interrupting the act. By using the name, he completely blew Haku's cover. Kakashi didn't even need to analyze it. So, they're partners. Zabuza-sama. Haku froze, confused. Kisame, what is your game? Zabuza ignored Haku and turned his gaze to the shark man. You're not after my sword, are you? Zabuza knew he was checkmated. He was battered from fighting Kakashi, barely able to stand. Facing Kisame, a chakra monster in peak condition, was suicide. Even Kakashi looked drained and was burdened with 3 useless genin. Zabuza's life was entirely in their hands. What would we want with your beat-up sword? Makoto answered for Kisame. Since we saved you, the price is simple. You, your sword, and your subordinate will join our branch. Kakashi's ears perked up. Branch? That implies a headquarters, a larger organization. Could it be that this was a new power, with Rogue Ninja at its core, gathering somewhere? An organization that can absorb someone of your caliber, Kisame, must be formidable, Zabuza mused. He weighed his options, join or die. It wasn't a hard choice. I can agree, but I have a few questions first. Zabuza fell silent, turning his gaze toward Kakashi and the trembling genin. Kakashi's expression was grave. An organized group of high-level rogue ninja was a nightmare scenario for the 5 great nations. He needed intel, but looking at his exhausted team, he knew this wasn't the time to play hero. Strategist, the mission is complete. Just as Kakashi was about to order a retreat, a flock of crows descended from the sky. They swirled together, manifesting into the form of Uchiha Itachi, who calmly handed a scroll to Makoto. Uchiha Itachi. Kakashi's blood ran cold. This was the worst-case scenario. And sure enough, the reaction was immediate. Behind him, Sasuke began to tremble violently. Itachi. With a roar of pure hatred, Sasuke threw a Fuma shuriken and charged forward with a kunai gripped tightly in his hand. His rationality was gone. Makoto nodded, taking the scroll and whispering a few words to Itachi. Only then did Itachi slowly turn his head. His eyes locked onto the charging boy. The 3 tomo spin instantly merging into the triangular pattern of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Stop, Itachi. Don't hurt Sasuke, Kakashi screamed, lunging forward to intercept. But halfway through his shout, whoosh, the world turned red. The sky bled into a dark crimson, and the ground vanished. Kakashi found himself bound to a cross. He wasn't targeting Sasuke. Outside the Tsukuyomi space, Sasuke froze while confused. After all, that pair of eyes was all too familiar. The moment he saw those eyes, it meant he was about to start reliving the night of the massacre. But nothing happened. Sasuke patted his chest, checking for injuries. He was fine. He turned just in time to see Kakashi collapse face-first into the river, unconscious, before being frantically hauled ashore by Naruto and Sakura. Chapter 12. Kakashi. Sasuke clenched his fists, staring at his teacher's unconscious form. Just moments ago, Kakashi had been praised as a legend. Kakashi of the Sharingan, the copy ninja, a man whose name terrified enemies across the nations. Even that shark guy and weird guy had called him a ninja world celebrity, and Hatake 50-50. Sasuke didn't know what those meant, but they sounded like compliments. And yet, this legendary shinobi had been taken down by Itachi in a single second. One glance. That was it. The gap in power was so massive it was sickening. Sasuke grit his teeth until they ached. He was learning from a man his brother could defeat with a single look. Even if Sasuke trained for 100 years under Kakashi, what was the point? His mind drifted to yesterday, how smug he had been about beating Naruto at tree climbing, how frustrated he felt losing to Sakura in chakra control. It all felt so childish now. So pathetic. Uchiha Sasuke. Startled, Sasuke snapped out of his thoughts. Makoto had appeared right in front of him, silently. Sasuke's body tensed, ready to fight or run. Relax, Makoto said, his tone casual. I just came to ask you a simple question. Do you want to know how to get stronger? Tell me. Sasuke shot a wary glance at Itachi in the distance. His brother stood motionless. Sasuke assumed Itachi was currently using genjutsu to keep Kakashi pinned down. In reality, the fight was already over. No matter how many days of torture Kakashi endured in the Tsukuyomi, only a split second passed in the real world. Itachi was just standing there like a statue, pretending to focus so he could eavesdrop on Makoto's conversation with his little brother. I am an archaeologist, Makoto lied smoothly. Your Uchiha clan possesses a stone tablet passed down through generations. It records the method for evolving the Sharingan. As your eyes get stronger, you can read more of the text. However, some of the information on it is misleading. I happen to know the correct version. Tell me. Sasuke stepped forward, agitated. A secret method exclusive to the Uchiha. And this stranger knew it. In the distance, Itachi's ears perked up. He had read the tablet, of course. He knew there were parts he couldn't decipher yet. But he had never fully trusted the ancient stone. He hadn't expected Makoto to bring this up. Don't be so hasty. We have plenty of time, Makoto said, sitting down on the grass. Let's start with the basics. The awakening and evolution of the Sharingan are triggered by emotional fluctuations. Emotional fluctuations. Sasuke's face darkened. He immediately thought of that night. The blood, the screams. Exactly. In fact, you've already awakened your Sharingan, Makoto pointed out. The only reason you can't use it yet is because your body is too weak. The awakening is mental, but sustaining it is physical. You don't have the stamina to keep it active. What? I've already awakened it. Sasuke was stunned, and then a wave of excitement hit him. What are you smiling for? Makoto scoffed. Is awakening a measly ontomo because your entire family got slaughtered something to be proud of? The words hit Sasuke like a bucket of ice water. The excitement died instantly, replaced by shame. But don't beat yourself up. Like I said, the key is emotion, not the tragedy itself, Makoto explained. In other words, a glass-hearted Uchiha is more likely to evolve their eyes than a stoic one. Take Uchiha Madara. Back in the Warring States period, people died every day. Madara was tough. His threshold for trauma was high. He didn't awaken his eyes until he was older than you are now. Makoto leaned back on his hands. Conversely, if you took a sheltered Uchiha princess living in a peaceful era, finding out her dad was having an affair might be enough to trigger the awakening. You don't need hatred, Sasuke. You can awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan through the sheer desire to protect your friends. Uchiha Madara, the name was a myth in the clan. Everyone knew of him, but few knew the details. Sasuke listened with rapt attention, focusing harder than he ever had in the academy. I could stop here, but since I've started, I might as well finish, Makoto said, looking Sasuke in the eye. Let's talk about the ultimate evolution. Ultimate evolution. Sasuke took 2 steps closer, practically vibrating with intensity. He completely ignored Naruto and Sakura, who were shouting his name from the riverbank as they dragged Kakashi's soggy body out of the water. The final stage is written on the tablet, but even your brother can't read it yet. I can tell you, though. Makoto lowered his voice. The Sage of 6 Paths had 2 sons, Indra and Ashura. They inherited his power. Indra is the ancestor of the Uchiha. Ashura is the ancestor of the Senju and Uzumaki. Because of their feud, their chakra keeps reincarnating into new vessels throughout history. Makoto paused for effect. The tablet claims that by mixing Uchiha and Senju DNA, you get the power of all things. That is false. You must combine the chakra of Indra and Ashura to recreate the eyes of the Sage of 6 Paths. Mixing random Uchiha and Senju blood does nothing. In the future, the world will face an invasion from an enemy so strong you can't even imagine it. I need soldiers. So, Uchiha Sasuke, do you understand now? Why I, your brother's apparent comrade, am helping you? Because Sasuke's eyes widened as the realization hit him. I carry Indra's reincarnated chakra. I'm qualified to evolve my eyes to the final eyes. It was the only logical conclusion. Correct, Makoto confirmed. You just need to obtain the chakra of Ashura's reincarnate. And Ashura's reincarnate is that loud blonde idiot behind you. I fucking knew it. Sasuke let out a long breath, glancing back at Naruto, who was currently yelling at Sakura. So, how do I get his chakra? There are 2 methods, Makoto said, holding up 2 fingers. One harms him, one doesn't. The first method is a gamble. Uchiha Madara used it. He stole a chunk of flesh from the first Hokage. But it took decades to work. He only unlocked the eyes right before he died of old age. The second method is safer and allows for a continuous supply of chakra. The success rate is higher, but since nobody has tried it, we don't know exactly how long it takes. Why didn't Madara use the second one? Sasuke asked immediately. Maybe he didn't think of it. Or maybe, Makoto smirked, he was too proud. The second method might earn you some strange looks from society. Pride is meaningless, Sasuke said firmly. His eyes burned with determination. Tell me the second method. He trusted Makoto completely now. This man knew too much. If Makoto wasn't standing next to Itachi, Sasuke would have considered defecting right then and there just to learn from him. Kakashi was just a stepping stone. This was the real path to power. In the distance, Itachi smiled. He chose the method that doesn't harm his friend. Good boy, Sasuke. The method is simple, Makoto said, his face perfectly serious. He pointed a finger at Naruto. Every day, you must drink a glass of his milk, if you know what I mean. Chapter 13. Alright, I've given you the answer. It's fine if you don't get it now, you'll understand when you're older. If you really can't figure it out, just ask Kakashi. Makoto dusted off his pants and stood up. Speaking of the devil, he should be waking up any second now. Pack him up and get moving. Your mission is officially complete. Makoto glanced over at Kakashi, who was sprawled out on the grass like a wet dog. Unlike the original timeline, where Kakashi was in a coma for a week after being subjected to Tsukuyomi, this time Itachi had held back, at Makoto's insistence. He didn't put Kakashi through the full 72-hour torture simulation. Instead, he just made Kakashi relive a greatest hits compilation of his trauma. Specifically, the Chidori piercing through Rin's chest. For Itachi, this was easy work. It was basically the same thing he did to Sasuke on a loop. The only issue was that Itachi hadn't actually been there when Rin died. Fortunately, Makoto, being the helpful, detail-oriented psychopath he was, had prepared a storyboard and reference photos in advance. All Itachi had to do was follow the script. Let's go. The 3 genin spent a solid 10 minutes looking for their carriage, only to discover that Zabuza had sliced it into firewood during the fight. With no other option, Naruto hoisted Kakashi onto his back, and the battered Team 7 began their limp back towards the road. On the road back to the Hidden Leaf. Drink a glass of milk. What the hell does that mean? Is it for calcium, bone density? Sasuke was muttering to himself, trying to decipher Makoto's cryptic advice. He remembered Makoto saying that his body wasn't strong enough to handle the Sharingan yet. Maybe the milk was a metaphor for enhancing his constitution. But, Naruto's milk, this was the method for the ultimate evolution of the Sharingan. Hey, dead last, Sasuke broke the silence, turning to the blonde. Is there anything special about the milk at your house? Special? Naruto blinked, adjusting Kakashi's weight on his back. Not really. It's usually kinda sour and chunky. I used to throw it out, but then Choji told me that's just called yogurt, so now I just chug it. Why? Sasuke stared at him. You moron, Sasuke said, his voice flat. That's because it's expired. He rubbed his temples. This idiot was drinking spoiled milk and calling it yogurt. How was his physique so good? Was diarrhea the secret to the sage's body? What's expired? A groggy voice came from Naruto's shoulder. Kakashi slowly opened his single visible eye. Because the Tsukuyomi was the light version, Kakashi didn't need a hospital stay. His brain was scrambled, sure, but he wasn't broken. He slid off Naruto's back, landing on his feet, albeit a bit shakily. Kakashi adjusted his mask. It felt weird. Like someone had stuffed a napkin in there while he was out. Plap. A folded piece of paper fell out from under his chin. Kakashi stared at it for a second, hesitating, before picking it up. He already knew who put it there. He read the note. Then he read it again. His visible eye widened in sheer confusion. Before he could process the paper, Sasuke walked up. He quickly filled Kakashi in on what happened. The peaceful resolution, the weird lore dump about the future, and Makoto's advice. The phrase, in the future, the shinobi world will face an invasion, and we need to gather power, gave Kakashi a convenient excuse to latch onto. It explained everything. It explained why these shrank criminals let them live. It explained why they gave Sasuke advice. It wasn't mercy, it was recruitment for a future war. So, Kakashi, Sasuke pressed, stepping into his personal space. What's the deal with the milk? He said I'd understand when I'm older, or I could just ask you. You definitely know, right? Milk. Kakashi froze. As a Platinum Tier subscriber to the Ika series, a man who appeared stoic but was inwardly a raging pervert, Kakashi connected the dots instantly. He realized what the first method was. Taking flesh. Hashirama cells. Madara had bitten off a piece of the first Hokage. That meant the second method, obtaining the chakra DNA through fluid without harming the host, was. Oh hell nah. It was perverted. It was incredibly, violently perverted. It was filthier than the plot of Ika Paradise Volume 3. Kakashi suddenly wished Makoto was a novelist. The man had a twisted imagination. Kakashi, your face keeps twitching. You know what it is, don't you? Tell me, Sasuke demanded, misinterpreting Kakashi's horror for deep thought. Sasuke, Kakashi sighed, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. Since he said you'll understand when you're older, why the rush? You're still young. He looked at his student with pity. Besides, that method is, well, if people found out you were doing it, you'd get some very strange looks from society. Sasuke scowled. He said that too. Something about strange gazes from the world. Sasuke clenched his fist, his eyes burning with edgelord intensity. Kakashi, do you think I care about that? As a shinobi, I have to endure humiliation. If I can't even handle some awkward stares, how can I ever kill that man? Kakashi just stared at him. Sasuke thought the strange looks would be because drinking milk is for babies. Kakashi knew the strange looks would be because Sasuke would be sourcing the milk from Naruto. I'm not trying to stop you, Kakashi said weakly. It's just, you really need to be mentally prepared. It's a lot to swallow. I can do it, Sasuke declared. Kakashi rubbed his forehead. If this was truly the only way to save the world without hurting Naruto, then he had to support it. Though, there is another option, Kakashi thought. If I become strong enough to protect them, Sasuke won't have to resort to that. Suddenly, the image of Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan flashed in his mind. Makoto's true goal in having Itachi attack Kakashi wasn't just torture, it was a tutorial. Kakashi had awakened his Mangekyo years ago when Rin died, but he had suppressed the memory. He hadn't realized he possessed the eye until much later. In the original timeline, Itachi's Tsukuyomi forced him to confront his mental barriers, allowing him to slowly unlock Kamui. Makoto was just hitting the fast-forward button. Kakashi looked at the crumpled note in his hand again. The instructions were simple, yet baffling. When you practice your new eye technique, please aim exclusively at the Hidden Leaf Village's septic tanks. Kakashi had no idea why. He couldn't ask, but so far, Makoto had helped them. He let them live. He gave Sasuke a path to power. He helped Kakashi unlock his eye. The request was disgusting, sure, but not impossible. Fine, Kakashi decided. I'll practice on the poop tanks. Meanwhile, in a dark, pocket dimension, miles away, the masked man, Obito Uchiha, had just sat down on a concrete block in the Kamui dimension. It had been a long day of plotting and manipulating. He was starving. He held a steaming bowl of spicy curry rice in his hands. He removed his orange mask, the aroma of the curry filling the void. He opened his mouth, anticipating the first delicious bite. Suddenly, out of nowhere, something wet and brown materialized from the void above him, splashing directly into his bowl. Achoo! Obito sneezed, staring at his ruined lunch in horror. Chapter 14. From the training plan Makoto gave Kakashi, his attitude toward the masked man, Obito Uchiha, was obvious. Makoto had zero intention of trying to persuade him. He wasn't going to give him the Naruto therapy treatment. Why? Because Obito was a lost cause. Makoto could manipulate the other Akatsuki members because he knew exactly what made them tick. He knew their desires, their fears, and their prices. Even Itachi, a card-carrying member of the Uchiha Psycho Club, only really cared about two things, the hidden leaf and Sasuke. In the original timeline, these two priorities conflicted, forcing Itachi into a corner where he had to threaten Danzo or consider brainwashing his own brother. But deep down, Itachi believed those two things could coexist. He was logical, even if his logic was twisted. But Obito, what the hell did he want? First, let's rule out resurrecting Rin. He knew about the Rinnegan Samsara of Heavenly Life technique. If he really wanted her back, he could have just hitched a ride when Nagato revived the entire Leaf Village. He didn't. Was it because he saw the truth of the shinobi world and decided it was beyond saving? Maybe. But that was a perception issue, not a reality issue. The original Akatsuki was a bunch of sunny, cheerful dudes who wanted peace. When Hanzo and Danzo set them up, there was a chance to fix it. A scout was running to warn them. Obito killed the scout. He killed the people yearning for the light, then turned around and complained that the world was too dark. It was the logic of a madman. Did he want to cast the infinite Tsukuyomi to live in a world with Rin? Casual fans might think so, but that wasn't it either. Obito said he wanted to create a world where heroes don't have to cry in front of tombstones. In Obito's version of the perfect world, the genjutsu dream he likely cast on himself, Rin was still dead. The only difference was that Kakashi wasn't grieving at her grave. Instead, Kakashi was alive and well, serving as Obito's right-hand man while Obito played Hokage. Rin's death wasn't the result he wanted to change, it was the premise of his suffering. His philosophy was a mess of contradictions. Makoto figured that if Rin and Sakura had switched places, none of this would have happened. Imagine if, instead of bandaging his wounds like an angel, Rin, Sakura, had looked at him and sneered, "Look at him. He got no parents, right? No wonder he has no manners." If Obito still wanted to destroy the world for a girl like that, then he was just a fucking masochist. Even if Sakura matured later, Obito would have been disillusioned long before he got crushed by a rock. In short, Obito was impossible to reason with. Makoto couldn't exactly walk up to him and start chanting, "Hokage, Hokage, Hokage," like some whispers from an old god to deprogram him. So, Makoto gave up on persuasion. Besides, Obito had a purpose. The five great nations didn't cooperate because of love or understanding. They cooperated because they were terrified of a common enemy. The Akatsuki might believe Makoto's story about the Otsutsuki aliens, but the Five Kage, they'd laugh him out of the room. The Otsutsuki invasion was 20 years away, and Ashiki was hiding. The world needed a boogeyman right now, and Obito was the perfect candidate for it. Meanwhile, on the road, after the Leaf Ninja departed, Makoto's group continued escorting the bridge builder. As they walked, Zabuza tried to finish the sentence he'd been interrupted on earlier. "So, about my Zabuza, I know what you want," Makoto cut him off again, not breaking stride. "You want to end the Bloody Mist era. We can support you in that." Makoto didn't just know the Akatsuki, he knew the ambitions of every major player on the board. Zabuza became a rogue ninja because his assassination attempt on the fourth Mizukage failed. When he picked up Haku, he swore he would return and take the country back. The man was driven by revolution, not just bloodlust. Years later, even loyal mist ninja like Chojuro spoke of Zabuza with respect. That proved Zabuza wasn't just a killer, he was a revolutionary who tried to save his village from its own madness. What? Zabuza stopped walking, stunned. Two thoughts raced through his mind. First, how the hell does this guy know that? Is this organization's intel network that terrifying? Second, why would they agree so easily? What's the catch? Have you looked at a map lately? Makoto stopped and pulled a scroll from his bag, unrolling a map of the world. The Land of Waves is perfectly positioned. It's the gateway for the Land of Water's foreign trade. Once that bridge is built, it becomes a gold mine. Makoto pointed to the island nation. I need you to control this territory, Makoto explained. Under headquarters' direction, we will develop and manage this port. It will provide a continuous stream of funding for the organization, and for your coup. That makes sense, Zabuza muttered, looking at the map. Small countries couldn't support a ninja village. Rogue ninjas were always broke, relying on cheap assassinations to eat. Money was power. If Makoto's group was serious, they needed cash. The Land of Waves was a strategic choke point. If the Bloody Mist ended and trade resumed, this island would be the toll booth. Zabuza nodded slowly. Eliminating the Bloody Mist restores the economy. Controlling the waves captures the profit. It connects. Exactly, Makoto rolled up the map. Oh, by the way, Kisame. He turned to the sharkman walking beside him. I recall your bounty poster says you became a rogue ninja for assassinating a daimyo. Was that a frame UP, or did you actually do it? I didn't do it, Kisame replied flatly. It was the truth. Kisame killed his superior, Fubuki Suikazan, for treason. Then he met the manipulated Mizukage and Madara, and jumped straight to the Akatsuki. He never wasted time killing a feudal lord, he was too busy having an existential crisis. Is that so? Makoto rubbed his chin, a dangerous smile forming on his face. In that case, are you interested in making that charge a reality? Zabuza and Haku froze. Assassinating a daimyo, that was taboo. That was the kind of thing that started world wars. Kisame, however, didn't even blink. He adjusted Samahata on his shoulder and grinned, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth. Sure, why not? Chapter 15. In short, a shinobi village can only be maintained with the funds and resources provided by the daimyo. Because Makoto had helped Sasuke, Itachi's guard was down. He was actually listening. Even after hearing Makoto suggest assassinating the water daimyo, Itachi didn't get angry. Instead, he tried to explain the geopolitical reality of the world to Makoto. Itachi, you've got it backwards. Makoto shook his head, interrupting the lecture. I've heard a saying in the Hidden Leaf, becoming Hokage doesn't make you acknowledged by everyone. Being acknowledged by everyone is what makes you Hokage. Itachi's eyes widened slightly. That was profound. The same logic applies to the title of daimyo, Makoto continued, his voice dropping to a serious whisper. Do you really think the daimyo sustains us? No, it's the farmers who grow the food, the workers who build the cities, the merchants who move the coin, and the shinobi who keep them all from getting slaughtered. Makoto gestured vaguely at the world around them. If the daimyo were actually competent administrators, I'd shut up. But look at them, look into your heart and tell me, do they have any ability? Makoto sneered. They are nothing but hereditary parasites. They cling to the nation's artery and suck it dry just because their great-grandfather had a fancy hat. A daimyo doesn't bring peace. Only those who create peace are qualified to rule. He turned to Zabuza. You're already planning a revolution to end the Bloody Mist. Why stop there? Why not burn the whole rotten system down and start fresh? The problem, Makoto paced back and forth, is that if the Mist Village officially moves against the daimyo, it causes a civil war. The sheep have been trained to kneel for too long. They'll panic. But, Makoto stopped and pointed a finger at the tall, shark-like man. If a rogue ninja, a monster with no ties to the village, were to do it, well, that's just a tragedy, isn't it? Kisame, Makoto smiled. You'd be the villain. You'd bear the hatred and the so-called essence of killing the monarch, all to pave the way for a better future. You wouldn't mind playing the bad guy one more time, would you? Everyone's gaze shifted to Kisame. I don't mind, Kisame grinned, showing his razor teeth. Thank you, strategist. A world without lies, you've shown me a path worth walking. My life has a little meaning again. He answered decisively, his nihilistic heart actually skipping a beat. But the person most shaken by this speech wasn't Kisame. It was Itachi. Makoto's words had hit him like a physical blow. First, Makoto used the core of the will of fire to dismantle the corrupt feudal system. Then, he suggested self-sacrifice, bearing the darkness and hatred so others could live in the light. It was exactly what Itachi had done. I was wrong, Itachi thought, staring at Makoto's back. This man's vision, his magnanimity, it astounds me. In the original timeline, Itachi wouldn't realize his mistake until he was reanimated during the war. He would die believing he had to do everything alone, controlling Sasuke's path from the shadows. But here, someone was finally correcting him. The third Hokage had failed to do this. Sarutobi had praised a traumatized Itachi for having a Hokage-like mindset, at age 7, reinforcing his martyr complex. But Makoto was showing him a different way. He trusts Kisame to handle the burden. He trusts Zabuza to rule. He trusts others. Itachi began to believe that Makoto really was the savior the world needed. A man with the will of fire, but without the shackles of the Leaf's bureaucracy. If it's him, I don't mind being used. Oh, right, Itachi. Makoto's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. There was one thing I left out when I talked to Sasuke. About the eternal Mangekyo. What? Itachi blinked, taken aback. He assumed the I issue would be an unspoken taboo between them. He hadn't expected Makoto to bring it up so casually. To unlock the eternal Mangekyo, you need to transplant the eyes of a close blood relative. I didn't tell Sasuke because, well, he's unstable. I was afraid he'd get weird ideas and go down the wrong path. You made the right call, Itachi nodded solemnly. But Itachi, listen, you're one of our heavy hitters. We can't have you going blind. Makoto looked at him with genuine concern. The Sharingan is basically hot-swappable hardware. You can just plug in a new pair. Your combat power might drop a little without the native compatibility, but you'll still be shrank. In regarding Susanoo, Makoto added, even if you lose your eyes, hell, even if you have no eyes, you can still activate it. It just drains a massive amount of chakra. It's the soul manifesting, not just the optic nerve. It doesn't matter. We can discuss my eyes later, Itachi smiled warmly, cutting him off. He appreciated the concern, but he knew the truth. His illness was terminal. He was living on borrowed time. He didn't know if a blind man could use Susanoo, but he knew he couldn't. His body would give out before his eyes did. However, Makoto's mention of hot swapping sparked an idea. Shisui's eye. Danzo still had the other one. If Itachi played his cards right, he might be able to use this search for a cure as an excuse to hunt Danzo down and reclaim his best friend's eye. It would stop Danzo from using Kotoamatsukami on anyone else. Strategist, Itachi said, raising a hand and pointing a finger at Makoto's chest. I have something to say to you, too. Your desire to gather everyone's strength is an excellent idea, but don't neglect your own power. A king cannot just be a brain, he must have a sword. Itachi saw potential in Makoto, but he worried the man was too focused strategy and doesn't have enough power to survive a kunai to the throat. My own power. Makoto laughed. Don't worry about that. Sometimes, taking the long way is the shortcut. It's not that I don't want to train, but the time isn't right yet. Makoto grabbed Itachi's wrist, and a surge of power was transmitted through it. Itachi felt his wrist go numb, and his pupils instantly constricted. Sage Art Chakra. No. It feels ancient. What is this? I see. Itachi relaxed his stance, a look of relief washing over his face. You're right, I was worrying for nothing. How could a strategist like you leave yourself open? Itachi chuckled. Exactly. All right. Zabuza slammed his fist into his palm, grinning like a demon. Enough talk. Once we secure the bridge, Kisame and I are going to pay a little visit to that damn daimyo. Chapter 16. Before Makoto enlightened them, everyone's thoughts were actually quite similar to Itachi's. They believed that the daimyo controlled the economy while the Kage controlled the military, and that the shinobi villages couldn't survive without the daimyo's funding. In reality, the daimyo were just a bunch of soft aristocrats who bullied the weak and wet themselves in front of the strong. Look at the Raikage of Kumo. He was a tyrant who barely listened to his daimyo. Look at the Kage of Suna. He was weak, so his daimyo cut his funding repeatedly, treating the village like an unwanted stepchild. And the fire daimyo, that guy was a piece of work. When faced with a hardliner like Danzo, he was as spineless as a jellyfish. When he met a naive kid like Naruto, he tried to act like a friendly grandpa. But put him in a room with someone like Shikamaru, smart but lacking raw power, and he'd immediately start acting like an arrogant king, throwing his weight around. Makoto's assessment was spot on. The daimyo system was a rotting corpse from the old era, and these lords were just parasites sucking the lifeblood out of their nations. If regular civilians heard this, they'd call it treason. But the people standing here were shrank rogue ninjas. Their minds were already unshackled. No problem, Makoto nodded. Zabuza, you're the perfect man for the job. You already have attempted assassination of a Kage on your resume. Adding a daimyo is just padding the stats. Besides, it'll save you from ending up like the previous owner of that sword. Makoto gestured to the executioner's blade. You know, the guy who tried to swat a tailed beast bomb with a sword like it was a fly. You really have a sharp tongue, Zabuza grunted, the corner of his mouth twitching. By the way, is that really how Juzo died? The guy had guts, I'll give him that. Blocking a tailed beast bomb with a piece of metal. That wasn't bravery, that was insanity. Juzo Biwa was my previous partner, Itachi interjected calmly. We were facing the fourth Mizukage, Yugura. He died protecting me. The mention of Juzo brought back memories for Itachi. It was also during that mission that Itachi awakened and mastered Amaterasu. The group finally arrived at the bridge, only to find Gato and his small army of hired thugs blocking the path. They had been waiting. This little rat, Zabuza grinned, looking at the mob. He probably wanted me and Kakashi to kill each other, then swoop in to finish off the survivor. If you guys hadn't shown up, the bastard might have actually pulled it off. Zabuza-sama, you're injured. Haku stepped forward, 3 Senbon needles already laced between his fingers. Please, allow me. Haku can handle this trash in his sleep, Zabuza said, glancing at Makoto. What do you think? Let me give it a try. Makoto stepped forward, cracking his neck. After all, I'm still a pure, innocent young man. I've never taken a human life before. Makoto shook his head with mock solemnity. Oh, Kisame looked surprised, then nodded. In that case, you should test your skills on these guys. They pose zero threat to you. Good practice targets, I'd say. To have never taken a life. Itachi chuckled softly. It seems the shinobi world of the future really does enjoy a long period of peace. Or maybe I'm just not qualified to face real enemies yet, Makoto countered. In my time, even a Kage is just a piece of meat on the chopping block. It's hard enough to scratch an enemy, let alone kill one. Internally, Makoto knew the truth. The peace Itachi imagined was a lie. The 20 years of quiet following the Naruto-Sasuke final battle came with a heavy price tag. Naruto and Sasuke had hidden the threat of the Otsutsuki clan, letting the world get soft. When the aliens finally attacked, everyone was caught with their pants down. The two heroes were overconfident, thinking they could handle it alone. Sure, technology advanced, they had scientific ninja tools and video games. But real progress, stifled. Orochimaru's research was leashed by the Leaf's bureaucracy. Kabuto Yakushi, arguably the brilliant scientist of his generation, was wasting his talent running an orphanage. Want to borrow my sword? Zabuza offered, holding out the massive blade. No need, I'm not a bloodthirsty savage like you, Makoto declined. Zabuza smirked and was about to say something when he realized Makoto had vanished. Turning his head, he saw that Gato's mercenary squad had been thrown into chaos. Makoto had appeared behind Gato at some point, punching straight through his chest, then tossing him aside like a piece of trash. You call that, not bloodthirsty? Zabuza stared, speechless. That's his first kill. Bullshit. Even Zabuza, a graduate of the Bloody Mist Academy who had slaughtered 100 classmates at age 9, hadn't been that brutal on his first kill. His first kill was a simple throat slit. This was efficient butchery. But then again, even if you've never eaten pork, you've seen a pig run. Just because Makoto hadn't killed didn't mean he hadn't seen death. Is this the physical enhancement of Sage Art Chakra? Itachi murmured, analyzing the scene. He had suspected it earlier, but this confirmed it. According to the Uchiha tablets, Sage Mode granted massive physical strength and sensory boosts. Makoto didn't look like a typical sage, but that punch was definitive proof. Makoto wasn't a sadist, he just didn't know his own strength. He wanted to test a jab and ended up putting a hole in the guy. Sorry everyone, Makoto shouted over the screams, dodging a sword swing. I don't know any fancy ninjutsu. This might get messy. As he spoke, He backhanded 2 rogue ninjas, snapping their necks instantly. 2 samurai saw an opening. They exchanged a look, thinking they had him cornered, and swung their katanas in a perfect cross-slash. Whoosh! Their blades hit nothing but air. Before they could process where he went, thwackt whack. 2 shuriken embedded themselves in the samurai's foreheads. It wasn't Makoto, it was friendly fire from their panicked teammates behind them. Damn it, this guy is a monster. One of the mercenaries screamed, dropping his weapon. Forget him, go for his friends, they look weaker. The logic of a mob is a fascinating thing. They saw Makoto exploding chests left and right and dodging like a ghost, so they decided he was the strongest. Gato was dead, so they weren't getting paid, but they were too adrenaline pumped to run. Instead, they looked at the sick-looking guy Itachi and the fish-looking man Kisame. Charge! The entire mob turned away from Makoto and sprinted toward Itachi and Kisame. Makoto stood there, surrounded by corpses, completely dumbfounded. Are these guys fucking stupid? He was killing them, sure, but he wasn't exactly speedrunning it. But now they were charging straight over there. Weren't they just signing their own death warrants? Kisame sighed, looking at the horde of screaming idiots rushing him. What a pain. He weaved a single hand seal. Water style. Water shark bullet jutsu. A massive shark made of condensed water exploded from the river under the bridge. It swallowed the entire front line of the charging mob in one gulp, crashing back into the ocean with a thunderous splash. The water turned red and silence fell over the bridge instantly. The remaining mercenaries dropped their weapons, realizing that maybe, just maybe, they had picked the wrong fight. Chapter 17, Swoosh. Kisame, ever the considerate gentleman, finished rinsing the bridge with a massive wave of water. In seconds, the blood and gore were gone. The bridge looked as clean as new. Watching this scene, Tazuna trembled like a leaf. He didn't dare breathe too loud. Facing the good guys from the hidden leaf, Tazuna could play the pity card. He could use moral coercion, guilt-tripping them about his poor village and his cute grandson. But facing this group of rogue ninja killing gods, he'd have to be batshit insane to try that shit here. One wrong word and the Sharkman would probably use him as a fish bait. Haku, Makoto called out, turning to the masked boy. You and Zabuza should know where Gato's base is, right? Go secure it, we don't want any of those rats who ran away to loot the treasury before we get there. Understood. Haku responded instantly and vanished, sprinting toward the other end of the bridge. Haku didn't even consult Zabuza. Although the boy hadn't spoken during the earlier strategy meeting, he had listened to every word. Makoto wanted to change the land of water. Zabuza had agreed to join. Zabuza followed Makoto. Haku was Zabuza's tool. Therefore, by the transitive property of ninja loyalty, Haku followed Makoto's command. While Haku went to seize Gato's assets, Makoto's group followed a terrified Tazuna back to his village. According to the old man, the village was dirt poor. So broke they couldn't even afford the official fee for a brank mission. But looking around, Makoto realized it wasn't that bad. If they were truly poor, they wouldn't have had the resources to start building a massive bridge in the first place. They were just squeezed dry by the blockade. After touring the village to get a feel for the layout, Makoto stopped walking. I got it, Zabuza. Makoto turned to the demon of the mist. From now on, you will establish a branch of our organization here. Let's call it the Wave Ninja Village. Though, the name sounds a bit wet. Makoto stroked his chin thoughtfully. Establish a ninja village. Tazuna's eyes widened, his jaw dropping. Ninja-sama, are you serious? Old man, you aren't wrong to blame Gato for your poverty, Makoto lectured, pacing back and forth. The exorbitant protection fees, the trade restrictions, I get it. But do you honestly think building a bridge is going to magically save you? A bridge only solves the physical transport problem. It doesn't solve human greed. Even if Gato is dead, what happens next week? Makoto asked, his voice cutting deep. Can you guarantee there won't be another Gato? Without a ninja village to protect this trade route, you're just a sitting duck. You saw those worthless thugs Gato hired. Kisame could wipe them out with a single jutsu. But what if the next guy hires a Jonin-level rogue ninja? What if they set up a blockade just like the Bloody Mist? What are a bunch of fishermen going to do then? Throw hammers at them. By the time that happens, Makoto leaned in, you won't even be able to sneak out to hire help. Makoto's words hit Tazuna like a ton of bricks. The realization dawned on him, but so did the fear. What if I'm just trading a wolf for a tiger? Makoto noticed the old man's hesitation. Honestly, the worry was pointless. If these monsters wanted to exploit the village, Tazuna couldn't stop them anyway. Relax. Gato was an idiot, Makoto scoffed. Even a miser like Kakuzu understands that sustainable development earns more money in the long run. Gato was just squeezing the lemon until it was dry. We want to plant a lemon tree. Zabuza, once the village is set up, scout the local kids. Find the ones with talent and teach them ninjutsu. As for the administration and politics, Makoto pointed at Tazuna. Dump that on the old guy and the locals. And Zabuza, listen closely, do not use the outdated system created by the first and second Hokage. It's inefficient garbage. Makoto tossed a scroll to Zabuza. I've written the new organizational structure in there. Follow it. Ah, Tazuna stood there, stunned, holding his breath. This terrifying man planned to let an ordinary person like him run the government. And he was going to train their kids to be ninjas. Let me be blunt, Makoto said, his eyes narrowing. We are rogue ninjas. We kill people for a living. If you mistake our tolerance for weakness, if you become corrupt and ruin this project, don't blame us for being cruel. But, Makoto's expression softened slightly, if you treat the Wave Ninja Village as a home to protect, then the village, the country, and the organization can all get rich together. The classic carrot and stick approach worked wonders. Tazuna nodded frantically, swearing he could get the other village elders on board within half a day. I never expected our strategist to be a genius in internal affairs, too, Itachi remarked, reading over Zabuza's shoulder. The scroll was brilliant. The reforms hit every pain point of the traditional village system. Itachi sighed with admiration. If only Makoto had been born in the leaf. Actually, Itachi was overthinking it. The reason Makoto gave Tazuna that, don't screw this up, warning was precisely because he knew how the hidden leaf worked. People think Naruto's childhood was sad because he was a hero's son who got bullied. They think the villagers were just mean to him. Wrong. The hidden leaf villagers are just assholes. They discriminate against everyone equally. Obito, bullied. Guy, bullied. Naruto, bullied. Hinata, the heiress of the strongest clan, bullied. Even in the Boruto era, rich kids got bullied. Hell, even Kushina got bullied for her hair. In Konoha, if you didn't have a traumatic childhood filled with bullying, were you even really a Konoha citizen? I wouldn't call it genius, Makoto waved off Itachi's praise. I just understand common sense. Do you really think it's normal for a Kage to have his desk piled high with paperwork about lost cats? Makoto sneered. He knew his limits. He could manipulate the Akatsuki because he had future knowledge and logic. But governance, he wasn't a politician. The only reason his reforms looked god-tier was because the original system was brain-dead stupid. Take the Hokage's workload. As Makoto pointed out, the 3rd, 5th, and 7th Hokage spent their days drowning in drank mission reports. Why does the Hokage need to sign off on finding Mrs. Yamanaka's runaway poodle? It was absurd. It was purely performative busyness. By the time Naruto took office, it became a farce. You had the strongest ninja in history, a living god of chakra, using shadow clones to help old ladies carry groceries and chase stray dogs until he passed out from exhaustion. He was so drained from doing minimum wage labor that he couldn't even maintain a clone to sing "Happy Birthday" to his own daughter and dropping the cake on the floor. Imagine Spider-Man stopping a mugging. That's fine. Now imagine Iron Man or the President of the United States personally responding to a noise complaint or a cat stuck in a tree, every single fucking day. It was micromanagement hell, not a damn leadership at all. Makoto was just fixing these obvious bugs in the code. He didn't deserve praise for telling them that the CEO shouldn't be scrubbing the toilets. As for delegating authority, Makoto glanced at Zabuza. Don't worry about being sidelined. In a world of ordinary people, giving away power is dangerous. But here, Makoto smirked. The Kage is the strongest fighter. That's the bottom line. You can let the civilians handle the taxes and the permits. If they ever try to betray you, well, you can just overturn the table. Or in your case, Zabuza, decapitate the table. Zabuza's strength was more than enough to keep the locals in check. And if anything unexpected happened, the Akatsuki headquarters had his back. Chapter 18. Speaking of which, does the Land of Waves have a daimyo? Makoto suddenly thought of a potential loose end. Tazuna had already run off to handle official business, so Makoto casually asked one of the villagers who had been left behind to attend to them. It seems there used to be one, the elderly villager recalled, scratching his head. So that means there isn't one now. No, he died years ago, and no successor was ever appointed. That saves a lot of trouble, Makoto muttered. He had been planning to clean house before heading to the land of water. Daimyo were pests, useless yet politically annoying. If the land of waves had won, Makoto would have had to remove him to ensure the new ninja village could operate without interference. Turns out, the land of waves was currently a headless state. No wonder a black market thug like Gato could control the entire country's lifeline. In a vacuum of power, even a rat can be king. It wasn't unusual for small countries to lose their leaders and fall into chaos. Take the land of rice, where Orochimaru established the hidden sound village. Orochimaru's bounty later included the hilarious charge of bribing the land of rice daimyo to establish a village, then occupying the country. The fact that the charge was bribery, rather than conquest, showed just how pathetic and humble the daimyo of rice really was. 2 days later, Makoto's group arrived at the coast of the land of water by boat. Hidden Mist Village, Hidden Mist Village. I thought this would be a fog-shrouded hellscape like Pandaria. Makoto stretched lazily as he stepped off the boat onto the sand. The environment here is actually quite nice, sunny beaches, sea breeze. Would make a great tourist destination in peaceful times. His words were obviously a joke. Who would dare visit the Hidden Mist right now? It was a damn meat grinder. You'd get killed by a paranoid hunterman just for looking at a tree the wrong way. Even in the future Boruto era, it took Mei-Terumi and Chojuro decades of bloodshed to purge the old guard before the village could even think about tourism. What a coincidence. Makoto suddenly stopped stretching and looked toward the distant forest. At that moment, Itachi, Kisame, and Zabuza had just stepped onto the beach behind him. Are they Hidden Mist ninja? Itachi followed Makoto's gaze. It took him a solid 10 seconds to detect the chakra signatures in the distance. He sensed them long before I did, Itachi noted internally. This confirms it, he must be using sage art. Yes, Makoto nodded, and one of our targets is among them. Of course, Makoto wasn't sensing anything. His sensory abilities were slightly above average, sure, but he didn't have a Byakugan. He couldn't see miles away. He had simply seen 2 minutes into the future. Exactly. Makoto's ability, time erasure, had a passive side effect, foresight. It had gradually grown from seeing a few seconds ahead to a full 2 minutes. This growth wasn't random. Makoto had been actively experimenting on himself. First of all, Itachi's assumptions about Makoto were wrong. Makoto did not possess sage art. As a transmigrator from another world, Makoto wasn't a soul possessing another body, it was a physical transmigration. His body had reverted to that of a child, but it was his original body. And as Makoto had explained to the Akatsuki, chakra didn't exist in humans until Kagaya Otsutsuki arrived with the god tree. That meant Makoto, an outsider, had 0 chakra. When he first arrived in the Hidden Leaf, Makoto had sought out Kabuto Yukushi, the director of the orphanage. He needed Kabuto to take in some war orphans from a megakure as a cover. But more importantly, he asked Kabuto to examine his body. Makoto trusted Kabuto because he knew the man had undergone Izanami. His personality had been corrected, he was loyal, peaceful, and honest. Kabuto did not disappoint. He examined Makoto for a day and gave him a strange diagnosis. Makoto had no chakra network, but his body was like an empty vessel perfectly suited for nature energy. Kabuto taught him a method to absorb natural energy directly, using it as a substitute for chakra. He didn't elaborate further. Kabuto was a reformed man. He wasn't going to conduct unethical experiments on a stranger, nor would he share dangerous secrets. He gave Makoto the basics and sent him on his way. In the shinobi world, creating chakra requires balancing physical energy and spiritual energy. Creating senjutsu chakra requires balancing physical, spiritual, and natural energy. Too little natural energy, the jutsu fails. Too much, you turn into a frog statue. But Makoto had no chakra to balance against. He just absorbed raw natural energy. Surprisingly, he experienced no side effects. No frog transformation, no petrification. It seemed that because there was no internal chakra to conflict with, the natural energy just sat there. Stability through purity. Why? Seemed, because Makoto himself wasn't entirely sure. He needed to find Orochimaru. He needed the snake Sanin to dissect this phenomenon properly. Until then, everything was just a hypothesis. For example, Makoto speculated that he gained his time eraser ability by coming into contact with Otsutsuki tech or energy during the crossing. But later, he noticed a correlation. When he used the ability, his stored natural energy depleted rapidly. When he consciously injected natural energy into that specific void inside him, the foresight grew stronger. Kisame, Zabuza, Makoto turned to the two swordsmen. You two split off here. Head straight for the capital. Deal with the daimyo swiftly, then take a boat out. Don't wait for us. Makoto pointed inland, away from the forest he was staring at. Understood, Kisame grinned. We'll leave the small fry to you. Kisame and Zabuza vanished into the trees, heading for their assassination gig. Itachi, Makoto said after a moment of silence. We're going to help the group coming toward us. Help them? Itachi raised an eyebrow. Yes, history is happening right in front of us. Makoto knew the timeline. One of the major turning points in the Hidden Mist's history was happening right now, the coup d'état against the 4th Mizukage, Yugura. Ao, using a stolen Byakugan, had discovered that Yugura was being controlled by Genjutsu. He informed Mei Terumi, and the rebel faction decided to act. They planned to free the Mizukage, or kill him if they couldn't. But Yugura wasn't just going to sit there and let them dispel the jutsu. The controller, Obito, would fight back. Makoto just hadn't expected to run into the main event the second they stepped off the boat. Let's go, Makoto said, his eyes flashing with anticipation. We're crashing the party. Chapter 19. I've never actually tried using the Mangekyo Sharingan to control a Jinchuriki or a tailed beast before, Itachi mused, listening to the explosions getting closer. Don't bother, Makoto waved his hand dismissively. We're just here to offer civilian support. Trust in the Hidden Mist's ability to clean up their own mess. Besides, Makoto added, even if you did control Yugura, the Mist Ninja would just stop attacking him and start attacking us. That defeats the purpose. Their goal was to secure the land of waves and build a network. Saving the Mist was just a means to an end. As for Yugura, the guy was tragic. Based on future history, Yugura wasn't inherently evil. He was actually one of the few Jinchuriki who fully cooperated with his village. But history records him as the one who expanded the Bloody Mist policies. This implied that he was being controlled long before Obito took over, likely by Madara. Madara had controlled the Three Tails to hunt Rin and Kakashi. If he was also controlling Yugura, the host, it explains everything. It also explained why a perfect Jinchuriki, like Yugura, could be caught in a Genjutsu at all. Normally, a perfect Jinchuriki is immune to Genjutsu because they have two conscious minds sharing one body. If the host gets hacked, the beast wakes them up. But Yugura was a special case. He was controlled before the beast was sealed, or the beast was controlled first. Since both the host and the beast were under the influence of the Sharingan, they didn't conflict. They were both asleep at the wheel. This was why Makoto stopped Itachi. If Itachi broke the Genjutsu now, Yugura would wake up. A sunny, cheerful guy suddenly realizing he's been murdering his own people for years. His mind would shatter. He'd either commit suicide or let the Three Tails rampage out of grief. Either way, the Mist would blame Makoto and Itachi for killing their cage. Plus, Itachi was sick. Using Susanoo to subdue a tailed beast would burn through his lifespan like jet fuel. Makoto wasn't going to waste his MVP on a fucking side quest. Ha, finally here, everyone. Push him to the coast. The rebel faction burst out of the treeline. Dozens of Mist Ninja formed hand seals midair, drawing water from the ocean to launch massive attacks. It was obvious why they chose this spot. Water-style users are god-tier near the ocean, but average on dry land. Even the future 6th Mizukage, Chojuro, was useless without a water source. By dragging Yugura to the beach, the rebels were leveling the playing field. Ow, check the perimeter. Any civilians? Negative. Wait, Ao's Byakugan flared. No civilians, but there are two unfamiliar ninja. Well, one seems to be a ninja, and he's quite powerful. The other is a weirdo but he has no chakra. Keep an eye on them. Everyone else, focus on the fourth. Tap. A woman with waist-length reddish-brown hair landed gracefully in front of Makoto and Itachi. She looked ready to kill them. 5th Mizukage, no need to be tense, Makoto smiled, raising his hands. We're here to help, and maybe talk business. 5th Mizukage, Mei Terumi blinked, thrown off by the title. Yugura was the 4th, there was no 5th yet. But she was sharp. She realized he was implying something. Help, cooperation. Mei narrowed her eyes, steam beginning to rise from her lips. If you want to help, stay right there and don't move. And if you want to cooperate, show some sincerity. Who are you? She sensed no killing intent from Makoto, but she wasn't stupid enough to lower her guard. Itachi, noticing the fifth Mizukage taunt, realized Makoto was doing it intentionally. Since the Mizukage insists, Makoto said, glancing at his partner, Itachi, stand down. Only intervene if someone is about to die. Understood. Whoosh. Itachi vanished with a body flicker. Itachi. Uchiha Itachi. Mei's eyes widened. The shrank psycho from the leaf. She watched him disappear, noting that he actually obeyed this weirdo order. He was just watching from a tree with arms crossed. She let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. But now she had more questions. Who the hell was this kid without chakra who could treat Itachi Uchiha like a bodyguard? Who are you? Mei asked again, her voice steadying. What do you want? Like I said, assistance and cooperation, Makoto shrugged. As for who I am, think of me as a traveler from the future, here to change the fate of the ninja world. Sound good, Mizukage-sama. The Mizukage is Yagura, Mei snapped, forming a seal. I don't have time for riddles. And, from the future. Do you really think I'm that stupid? If this guy was going to lie to her face with such a ridiculous story, he was clearly an enemy. Don't be so impatient, I have proof, Makoto said, reaching into his pocket. Though, it's a bit personal. You have to promise not to get angry before I show you. He pulled out a scroll. Proof. Mei hesitated, loosening her hand seal slightly. Could it be true? The world was full of strange jutsus. Fine, she said, curiosity winning out. I promise, show me. She ignored the warning about getting angry. What kind of proof could possibly piss her off? Alright, Makoto unsealed an item. It was a photo and a tape recorder. Click. He pressed play button on the tape recorder and a woman's voice, slurring, clearly wasted, and sounding exactly like Mei, crackled from the speaker. Hick. The enemy is the legendary Uchiha Madara, and look at my 4 teammates. Mei froze. The recording continued. One is a stubborn old fossil who's lived long enough to dust 25 Susanos, hick, freaking Tsuchikage. One is a muscle-brained psycho who isn't afraid of death, tries to karate chop a Susano while he was on fire, stupid rakage. One is a female pervert who won't die even when you cut her in half, show off Hokage. One is a sandy little brat who died once and doesn't even need to sleep, creepy cage. And me, hick, I'm just an old, unmarried woman who can only spit water. Why can't I find a husband? Why, wah. Mei Terumi, Chapter 20, quote. Mei Terumi blinked. She recognized the voice. It sounded exactly like hers. Aside from understanding the reference to Uchiha Madara, in the first few sentences, she had no idea who the other descriptions referred to. Old fossil, muscle brain, dead brat. But the last part. What do you mean, an old woman who can only spray water? Mei Terumi lowered her head slightly. Her face darkened as she gritted her teeth, a dangerous aura radiating from her body. Don't be impatient, you said that yourself, Makoto replied, keeping a straight face. Besides, I agree that the statement is inaccurate. Oh, Mei's emerald eyes lit up instantly. You do, then tell me. You don't just spray water, Makoto nodded solemnly. You also spray sticky mucus and highly corrosive acid mist. Quote. So the old unmarried woman part is correct then. Mei's expression stiffened. The dangerous aura returned, twice as strong now. Before she could explode, Mei froze. Wait, how does he know about my lava release and boil release? Right now, she was just an elite jonin in a closed-off village. She had never fought outside the land of water. Her Kekkei Genkai were classified secrets known only to a few in the mist. Could it be? Mei Terumi felt a chill run down her spine. She was actually starting to believe this kid's ridiculous story about being from the future. She never expected she would become the 5th Mizukage. Or that she would fight the legendary Uchiha Madara. Wait, isn't Madara supposed to be dead? The amount of information Makoto had dumped on her was overwhelming. After a long silence, Mei finally released her bite on her lower lip. She looked at him with complex and confusion in her eyes. How you came back, or why, I know you won't tell me even if I ask, she said, her voice softer. So just tell me, how did we meet? And where did this recording come from? Is that all you want to know? Just tell me, it's nothing special, Makoto shrugged. In the future, during a joint Chunin exam, the Five Kage gathered for a summit. I took photos with all of them. As for the recording, it was originally a video. The 6th Mizukage attended the meeting, and you, having retired, tagged along because you were bored. We started chatting, you dragged me to a bar, and I was worried that if something happened, I'd need evidence to prove my innocence. So I recorded it. This is just the audio extraction. Hey, May felt a vein pop in her forehead. She wanted to laugh from sheer disbelief. Worried you'd need evidence. With her stunning beauty and charm, shouldn't she be the one worrying about men taking advantage of her? Was this brat implying she was a predator? Hiss, wait, you just said, you're from how many years in the future? May clenched her fists, staring at him intensely. 20. May Terumi fell silent. The air around her seemed to lose all color. 20 years later, and I'm still single. Today was supposed to be a historic day. They were going to free the 4th Mizukage, end the bloody mist, and welcome a bright new era. But hearing this news, May felt like her future had just collapsed. She lost all motivation to live. Don't be too sad, it's not your fault, Makoto comforted her, patting her shoulder awkwardly. There are plenty of opportunities to change things now, right? Look, you were the first person I sought out in the 5 great nations. That's because we eventually became cross-generational friends in my time. Cough, cough, cough. May Terumi choked on her own spit. She had just started to calm down, but the phrase, cross-generational friends, hit her like a physical punch. It implied an age gap so massive it bridged generations. It implied she was old. It took her a solid minute to recover. What's that photo in your hand? She remembered that Makoto had pulled out a stack of photos earlier. Here, you can deal with it yourself, Makoto handed it over without comment. May took a deep breath. She steeled herself for whatever horrors awaited her aging face. She looked at the photo. Quote exclamation mark quote. Even with mental preparation, May nearly fainted. She threw the photo into the air and she opened her mouth. Hiss. A cloud of acidic mist erupted from her lips. The photo disintegrated into ash before it even hit the ground. Snap. After destroying the evidence, May turned around. She marched up to Makoto, grabbed his shoulders, and physically turned his head to face her. Look at me, she commanded, her face inches from his. Remember how I look now. Forget your previous memories. Delete them. The current May Terumi was in her prime. One emerald eye visible on her face, chestnut hair flowing, wearing standard ninja mesh and armor. She looked dangerous and beautiful. Mizukage-sama, Makoto smiled wryly, not resisting the manhandling. Before you try that, maybe you should borrow a Sharingan to wipe my memory properly. Don't call me Mizukage, I'm not the Mizukage yet. Just call me May. Give me the tape, she demanded, holding out a hand. Then I might consider listening to your proposal. Makoto didn't resist. He dropped the cassette into her palm. Unlike the photo, May didn't melt the tape. She pocketed it swiftly. Then, her expression shifted. The frantic, insecure woman vanished, replaced by the cool, calculating leader of the rebellion. Speak. About the collaboration. In the future 4th Great Ninja War, May Terumi had the least seniority among the 5 Kage. She ascended to the position after Yagura died and the elder Genshi served as interim leader. The reason she was chosen wasn't just strength, it was because she loved the village more than anyone. Today's mission to save Yagura was proof of that. So when this time traveler mentioned cooperation for the sake of the mist, she took it seriously. She shelved her romantic despair for the sake of her people. First, Makoto began, switching to business mode. The land of waves is now under our influence. Once you lift the bloody mist policy and reopen the borders, all diplomatic and trade matters can be routed through there. The land of water's biggest assets are seafood and tourism. You have sunny beaches and unique geography. In the future, this place will become a vacation hotspot. Although I haven't been to the future version of the mist myself, you showed me photos back then. Makoto reached for another stack of photos. Swish. May snatched them out of his hand instantly. She wasn't taking any chances with unflattering angles. But this time, the photos just showed scenery, bustling ports, happy tourists, clear skies. Such beautiful scenery. May gazed at the images, her eyes softening. Can the future really be this wonderful after the bloody mist clears? Yes, thank you, May said sincerely. Knowing this will help us avoid many detours. I'll persuade Master Genshi and the daimyo to steer the village in this direction. We will cooperate. No, Makoto shook his head. Persuading Genshi isn't enough. I want you to become the Mizukage as soon as possible. You need absolute authority. He looked her in the eye. You don't think I traveled through time just to help you make money on tourism, do you? Mei's smile faded and she sighed softly. As the future, still not peaceful. She had suspected as much. A time traveler doesn't come back to fix the economy. They come back to stop a war. To be continued.